Adam Torrance.
Adam Torrance. Point of order.
Yeah. I mean, that's how they're going to hear us. Yeah, I know.
Someone gets a text and go.
One, two, test, test, test.
No, you're gonna have to go to Jake's podium. But we have our opening room. That's all there is.
I have it. Yeah. Here it is. All right, so 407, I'll have someone come grab you.
I know, his fucking plaid shirt.
Testing.
Oh, that was on the mic.
Obi, test your mic.
Point of order, Mr. Temple.
Yes, that's
Test it.
Test it.
Test your mic.
Hi, Mr. Wright.
Hi, Mr. Wright.
Hola, Mr. Wright.
Point of order, Jake Temple.
I do. I got them all bindered and stuff in here, so.
Who's ready? You all good?
Here, then come up here and just glimpse at it, because I need it, because it's like on the same page as other stuff.
Testing, testing. Mr. Wright.
What was it, car insurance?
Abby, have you gotten the name tag?
I need committee chairman. I need Voss.
Talk to Gabe.
I need Strew. And I need Keenum.
Right here, fine.
On your shirt. One's for this week, one's for next week.
Thank you.
What's that? 19th Amendment.
Hey, but I mean, like, look at this one, look at this one, that one. They're all the same. Yours is gonna be just as good as everyone else's. Don't even worry about it. And you're gonna be up here for 30 seconds.
Good luck, dude. Go Democrats, bro.
I'm first to commit. You better back off.
I don't know why they have two. Yeah, just give them one in case they lose it. The second one's probably for day two. Committee two binder?
I have the order in here. 407 is first. 203, yes. Yes. All right. 406, yes. 307, yes. Yeah, I do. It's right here. 109, yes, and then 306, yeah. Hey, Caleb.
Abby, ours should be red.
Stuck in the middle.
Those are Democratic. Bigger Press is Democrat.
I have to get in my desk.
Wait, wait.
For a little bit.
All right, I gave all the spares to Gabe. He's down there, so. Here, Chris, give this to Gabe.
Do you have extras, Danielle?
I need to find Mr.
I'll take them. Give those to Peter so they can
Gabe.
for next full session.
Oh,
Yeah.
and Bartos, Christina Bartos. Okay. Man,
Keep track of the second name tag. You don't have yours? I know I wrote you one. For what? Oh, it's Abby.
Oh, yeah. Okay, put him over here.
Let's go through Matthew to Bailey to me.
Senor? Pretty sure I spelled sergeant wrong, didn't I?
Be a referral from
Hey, is that how you spell sergeant?
Sergeant.
I feel like there's an E in there before the other E. CR, yeah, that's what I thought. I'm gonna, yeah.
I have to get Matthew.
Sergeant. Is that better? What the fuck? Sergeant.
Microphone's right there.
Testing.
It's not on. Don't worry about it.
I just heard it. Thank you. I'm going there.
where's it? How do you turn it on? What is that?
Gabe,
I don't know.
we good?
Or we'll just talk away from it.
Hit it.
Hey.
No.
Yeah, that's the last one.
Whoa. Whoa. Thank you. Easy.
Hey, do you have that list?
Yeah. That's what I did before.
Oh my God. Yesterday I was in Gymnasium.
Yeah.
Okay. It should be somewhere over here.
Just Philly.
Wait. Oh, are you speaking against it?
Please find a seat, mister.
Oh, girl. Wait, no, I'm not done yet.
Stand up at the same protocol. Back here at Matt. Or still stuck under here.
Are you? I got a better one. Thank you. All I need.
So I'm only getting out of this like 7 times.
We'll make sure people are.
Not on my there.
Can you get some?
Yeah.
Good. Please sit down. Can everybody please find a seat? Thank you. Before this goes into session, I'd like to lead you in the Pledge of Allegiance, so everybody please stand up. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and for the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'll now call third legislative semester, day 1 to order. I would like to welcome all the guests, teachers, and students here, all the faculty that are in attendance, everyone who is watching at home on IHSA TV. I'd like to welcome all congressmen and women. Just a warning to please act professional. We have our Sergeant of Arms back there who will remove you if you are doing any disruptive activities such as talking or use of electronic devices. Mr. Clerk, can you please take roll?
Here.
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 Here. Mr. Dennis is here. All right, we will now open with our first bill. Mr. Clerk, can you please hand me the papers for House Bill 407, shifting judicial powers to the Rules Committee? I will now yield 5 minutes for opening remarks to Mr. Meridian and Mr. Temple.
You're what?
All right. Good morning, guys. Our House Bill 407 is titled Shifting Judicial Power to the Rules Committee. When we won our elections to this position, we wanted to present full session to its greatest extent. So we started to look through the procedures and to see how it runs. We looked through the RAMs and we spoke with the teachers. And one process that we noticed was that after everyone did their bills in full session, the president looks over it, like any president would, and approves or vetoes it. Now, in our government, we have a judicial branch to check the president if they don't have a reason to do it. In our committee hearings, though, in our full session, we don't. So, this is a problem that we want to address because it's our responsibility to get as many bills passed as we possibly can that deserve to be. A bill shouldn't deserve to die because it has one flaw, whether it's the age limit, the pricing. If it's something that can be fixed, we should be able to fix it.
Now, I don't know about all of you committee members, but I don't remember having a presidential election to elect Ms. Chief Executive. Now, in the RAM, it states that the president is not chosen by the students whatsoever. It is chosen by the teachers. The teachers are the only ones who have any type of say who's going to be the president. Now, shifting the judicial power to the Rules Committee, you people have elected the Rules Committee. If you remember in class, we had elections, nominations of all the people you trust to enforce the rules during full session. So obviously we're trustworthy people. Like he said, we are supposed to be enemies, but we're supposed to be butting heads during this. But we have decided to join together and work because we're trying to increase the efficiency of full session. Full session is not supposed to be a show. We're supposed to get work done. We're supposed to get bills passed.
Right. So following that up, when we realized that this was the process, I wanted to go talk to the teachers to interpret it better. And so I asked some of them, I said, how many bills have been vetoed in the past from full session? And the teacher said about 50%. Now, it's not enough that the bills have to go through committee hearings in full session. Now you have to deal with a president. And I mean, everyone has to. That's the way the government works. Because we've gone through so many things such as our individual papers, elections, signatures. We've done so many things and we've invested so much time into this that we should be able to have a say in the way that our bill ends. Because we've invested time both inside and outside of class. Putting our bills in the hands of a president who doesn't know the bills the way that we do, who doesn't know the way that our class runs like we do, and who doesn't know the politics like we do, is a flaw.
Now, like he said, we have put 3 months of work into the bills here at full session today. And it gets by me why we would want the bills to rest in the hands in the fate of someone that doesn't have the experience that we have in this class. I mean, I'm not trying to rip on Ms. President, but I just don't see a point. Now, like I said earlier, we are willing to work together. We're also willing to work together with Ms. President. If our bill passes, we would be getting together with the President to find out her stances on all of the bills, and we would be sure that they would fit the criteria. Now, that being said, I urge all of you to vote yes for House Bill 407. Thank you for your time. Yield the remainder of my time back to the Speaker.
Thank you. I will now yield 3 minutes to the opposing side. Mr. Meridian, you have the floor for 3 minutes.
Ms. Overly, can you come up here, please?
All right. I will be giving the speech in opposition to Bill 407 in place of Ms. Overly. I rise in opposition of House Bill 407, implementing the Rules Committee as judicial branch. The whole idea of this bill is to take away power from the people. Basically, going from a democracy to an oligarchy, which is defined as a small group of people having control of a country or institution. As this bill states, in previous years, there's been no bill that resembles this. This is for good reason, too. It's completely unnecessary and a conspiracy being put together by the people who are trying to steal away your power and put it in the hands of someone else. They hide the secret plan by putting comfortable words in front of your eyes on paper, completely deferring away from what is actually going to happen. Do not go into this so blindly. The only requirement necessary is the approval of the student body. Why would they throw the word arguably in there, meaning it may be argued to qualify? Ultimately, your say in the matter in the end is completely pointless to them. Why do you think their beliefs on certain bills are superior to ours? Just because they have the position as the Rules Committee members should not, and they will not give them the ability to choose what is best concerning each bill. Take in good measure that whatever kind and friendly words they are going to throw at you are lies. This bill is very deceiving, and that is why I'm here to help you see what is beyond the fine print. The arguments are going against mine and going to seem very harmless and quite possibly very rational. Do not be fooled. We as student body need to stick together and not be overthrown. In House Bill 407, they talk about how they are going to revise and check the grammar. There's no realistic way that their approach is going to make the legislative semester more efficient. Legislative semester is already being efficiently run, as enacting this bill is only going to cause controversy and more problems. In conclusion, I strongly advise you to take everything I've said to you in perspective. There's nothing but a scheme, and a good one, for the people who cannot see beyond what is really being said. They can go on and on about a matter that does not even concern the real potential concerning this bill. I'm here to bring the truth of this bill, House Bill 407, into light, and to keep the power within the student body. I yield back my time back to the Speaker.
Thank you.
Point of order, she yielded her time to the Speaker.
She didn't say it in the mic. Thank you.
For your point of order, Mr. Temple, he still had time on his remaining thing, so he had to.
She yielded it to the Speaker. She said I yield my time to the Speaker.
All right.
Thank you.
I will now yield 3 minutes to Mr. Temple for supporting arguments.
I will yield my time to Mr. Kuntai for 3 minutes.
My fellow committee members, I stand here before you today in support of House Bill 407. This bill will give us more power to the students which run the class in the first place. Now, I would like to refer you to page 220, Article 2, Section 2.9, and subsection H3 of your RAMs. One of the responsibilities of the Rules Committee members is to approve bills and amendments for clarity, quality, and format. Should they not be should they not be entitled to do this after full session as well? There has been a misconception that this bill will give the Rules Committee more power, but how much more power is a general indication. Essentially, this is a concern of partisan politics. The role of the Rules Committee members under this bill will be to look over the bills that pass full session and decide whether or not they require revision. The bills that are returned can either be amended and voted on or overruled by a two-thirds vote. The bills that reach the Rules Committee cannot be shut down by them. So clearly, the idea that the Rules Committee's balance of power will shift greatly is completely baseless and unenforced by any factual evidence. At the beginning of the school year, we have been told that legislative semester is run by us, the students. However, the teachers select the president of their choice. Therefore, the teachers have indirect control of whether the bills pass or fail. As the student body, we must remain in control of the bills we have worked on in full session. I strongly encourage you to vote yes for House Bill 407. Thank you. I yield my remaining time to Mr. Temple.
I'd like to reserve the remainder of my time. And I'll yield the remainder of my time back to Ms. Sweet.
Thank you. I'll now yield 3 minutes to Mr. Meridian.
Thank you. I'd like to yield my time, 1 minute of it, to Mr. Smith.
I rise in opposition of House Bill 407. It gives all the power of passing or declining bills to 6 students. If this bill passes, it will not matter if the committee members in full session pass a bill. If the Rules Committee does not like the bill, all they have to do is veto it. In theory, the bill is good, but the major problem with it is since all of the members of the Rules Committee are in civics already, they have their own personal biases on each of the bills. With this thought in mind, if the Rules Committee doesn't like a bill just because they're against it, then we don't really have a say if they can veto it or not on fair terms. I urge you again to please vote against this bill or rise in opposition of House Bill 407. I yield the remainder of my time to Mr. Meridian.
I'd like to yield 1 minute of my time to Mr. Barnes.
I rise in opposition of HB 407 shifting the judicial power to the Rules Committee. If this bill passes, it will not matter what we as a committee members believe should pass or fail. If the Rules Committee doesn't like it, they can just veto it. If the Rules Committee has a biased opinion, then it will never have a chance to pass. In the end, this bill gives all the power to just 6 students. I again urge your opposition against HB 407 shifting the judicial power to the Rules Committee. I yield the remainder of my time to Mr. Meridian.
Thank you. I yield my time back to the Speaker.
Thank you. I'll now yield 3 minutes to Mr. Temple for closing arguments.
I'd like to
the remainder of your time.
I'd like to yield 3 minutes of time to Ms. Walsh.
I rise in opposition to House Bill 407 on shifting judicial power to the Rules Committee. An oligarchy is defined as a form of government in which all power is vested in a few persons. These bill sponsors, our very own elected floor leaders, Mr. Temple and Mr. Meridian, are trying to go behind all of our backs and create this power for themselves so that they can rule our full session and have control.
Point of order.
Allowing us.
This time is designated for support of the bill. She can come over to this side if she'd like to speak in opposition of it.
Don't I have the right to speak whatever I want?
I yield this time for supporting arguments. You would have to move to the Democratic side.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Most of you have seen Ms. Meridian's written plans that were discovered. He has been scheming this for quite some time. Don't you want your vote to count and mean something? Our voting will be useless unless we deny this bill and vote against it. This step will allow them to veto any bill that they personally do not agree with. They aren't going to consider our votes and what we all think. If we didn't want this bill, it wouldn't have passed by our vote in the first place. They are taking the meaning of our votes and putting all of the power and decisions in their own hands. This is an unnecessary step that is not needed for our legislative semester. They're simply taking the power of the president and the power of us, the people, and putting it in their own possession. They want to make it more realistic. Last time I checked, the judicial branch includes 9 people, and under the doctrine of separation of powers, the judiciary branch does not make laws. Making laws is in the responsibility of the legislator. That is us, the legislators. The judicial branch uses the laws that we create and applies them to the situations. Mr. Temple and Mr. Meridian are trying to convince all of you that they are not only trying to help and include the judicial branch in this legislative semester course. Do I need to repeat legislative? There's no role for them to take, nothing more that they can contribute. They want us to vote yes so that we contribute to their power, so that they can take our voices and throw them out as if they mean nothing. They want to take the power we've been given as legislators and keep it for themselves so that they can form an oligarchy. They will not help our bills get passed by the president. If we pass any bill here in full session, we obviously want it to go to the president and like it the way it is. They will take the bills we pass and veto them just because they personally don't approve of them. They're taking advantage of our trust in them as elected floor leaders and using our trust against us. Fellow congressmen, they are not here to help us. They are not urging the approval of House Bill 407 for us. They are doing it for themselves. They are doing this to take our power. They are plotting against us. I urge you to oppose
Point
House
of
Bill
order, your
407
time is up.
for your own sake.
Thank you.
Just read it,
I will now yield 3 minutes to supporting argument, Mr. Meridian.
Thank you.
Point of order, he's opposition.
In opposition, I'm sorry.
I'd like to yield 30 seconds of my time to Ms. Baclita.
I am speaking this speech in place of a committee member who does not want to speak his speech. I rise in opposition of HB 407 of shifting the judicial power to the Rules Committee. This wouldn't be a fair way to pass bills because it would allow just one group of people to vote what passes and what doesn't. Shifting the judicial powers doesn't allow people to have a saying and takes away opportunities to reasonable arguments to when it comes to voting on bills. In other words, it gives too much power to the Rules Committee. I yield the remainder of my time to Mr. Meridian.
Thank you. I'd like to yield my time back to the speaker.
Thank you. I'll now yield 3 minutes to Mr. Temple.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to ask how much time I have reserved. Thank you. I'd like to yield 3 minutes of time to Mr. Pasley.
I rise in support of House Bill 407. This bill has a number of benefits, and clearly some of the points of this bill are being missed, judging by the speeches on the other end of the room that are being given. The point of this bill is to be an intermediary, kind of allow us the ability to improve our bills after they've come here. We all know the process right now states that once bills have made it to full session, there's no way to amend them. That's it, they're done. What this allows us to do is it goes through the Rules Committee, it sets them up as an intermediary, and allows them the ability to work with the president and amend our bills, find improvements that need to be made in order for them not to be vetoed, because we know how much it would break our hearts to see these bills that we put through be vetoed by a president who, as it was brought out, hasn't spent any time in this class. Now, the Rules Committee needs a 2/3 vote to even adjust it, so obviously they have to be united. And of course, it then comes back down to us, and if we don't agree with the decision they've made, we can overrule their decision. The power still remains in our hands. So, with that said, I'd like to go into the speech that I had planned now. It also, I brought out a few points already, but it also allows us the chance to change the class. All of the bills except for this one don't change anything whether or not they're passed. This one begins a new dynamic into the class that can be followed by future classes and begin to improve our own experience in the class and begin making adjustments that actually will make a difference. Also, there are some people who have said that it gives more power to the Republicans or to a limited group. That's not true at all. The Republicans, currently the current Democratic majority is a 77 to 26, which is a 75% majority. And in the Rules Committee, it's 1 to 5, which is 83%. So there's really no difference in majority. And of course, like was brought out, there's no reason to worry about a limited group having power because it comes back to us and the power remains in our hands. It just gives us the ability to improve bills. And I apologize. Yeah, that was pretty much the main part. Also, I'd like to bring attention really quick to the opposition arguments. Do we really want to follow the speech of someone who can't even follow the rules at full session? I would advise you to ignore everything that was stated, as she cannot follow rules clearly, and use your vote to support this tremendous bill. I yield my time back to the speaker as we're out of time.
All right, thank you. I will now yield 3 minutes for closing remarks. Will Mr. Meridian and Mr. Temple please move down to the podium?
All right, thank you guys. A common misconception that we have about this bill is that the Rules Committee is the one who's going to be doing the changes, but that's not the case. If our bill passes, hypothetically, and we have a bill that got passed and we review it, we can come back and say, this is a problem, this is a problem, and this is a problem. But we can't kill the bill. Now we can say, we're giving you guys the option to amend it. These 3 things are enough to cause a veto, so you guys have a chance to fix it. Like we said, we'll talk with the president, and we'll see what bills she has questions about. And with that said, Miss Congresswoman over there, she said that we're trying to create an oligarchy. Now, that's a little bit of malarkey, but, get it? All right, anyway, but you guys can impeach us. It's not like the president. She's picked by the teachers. She stays there. We've been picked by you guys as representatives, and you guys can impeach us if we step out of line. Honestly, what this is just to look over the same way you would have a teacher review like an essay. You missed a comma here, you missed a period here, you need to capitalize this. We're not changing anything about the bills. We're just saying things that concern us to let you guys know. And if you guys can address them, that way your bills have a better chance of passing.
All right, like he said, the people who bring up this oligarchy clearly have not read the bill in full. It clearly states that any decision made by the Rules Committee can be overruled by the people. An oligarchy is defined as a small group of people that run everything. If it can be overruled by the people, that doesn't make sense that it's an oligarchy to me. Also, where am I going with this? I'm sorry, guys. Then one of the speeches stated that the Rules Committee is biased, when I don't understand that because it's a Democratic majority Rules Committee. Yes, that may not appeal to my Republican Party over here, but for the Democrats, it's not biased. It's biased towards you. They're majority Democrat. There's one Republican, and that's me. So I don't understand this biased malarkey.
And when the president was elected by the teachers, they had a bunch of people who were the candidates for this presidency. And Miss Villy was the most conservative option the teachers had to them. So she may not be Republican. I don't know if she's Democrat, but she is, in fact, like the worst thing to like undermine our power as a Democratic majority. Because if she sees a lot of views the same way the Republicans do, we have a lot of bills in here that are Democratic.
Point of order, your time is up.
Thank you for your time, guys. Vote yes for House Bill 407.
We will now go into a recess for 3 minutes.
All right, listen to this.
All right, Ms. Voss, what evidence do you have to accuse Mr. Meridian and Mr. Temple of scheming, and how do you feel about Mr. Paslek's statements?
We found evidence of a plan that Mr. Meridian had created about how he planned to get Jake Temple into minority, planned to only pass his bill, and to use it against the rest of legislative semester. So we have proof that he has been planning and scheming this to use it against us all this time.
And how do you feel about Mr. Paslek's statements?
There is absolutely no rule in the RAM, that is the rule book of this legislative semester, saying that I cannot speak whatever I want to speak on either side. I am allowed to speak in support or in opposition as long as they yield me the time on either side of the podium.
Have you changed your mind after the closing arguments?
No way.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think they're in this order. I'm not sure though. I think, yeah, they're in this order. It's metrication and then, I don't know what this is. Allowing homosexuals to donate blood. And then prostitution. And then sexual offenders. Interrogation methods. You're like the last one. You are the last one. And then car insurance. I'm like the last.
Point of order, we are now back in session. Please find your seats.
Oh, what do you need for the name shirt? I need my name. All right.
We are now going to go to a vote. Will each committee go to their respective computer? Committee 1 will be on this side, Committee 2 will be on this side, Committee 3 will be on this side, and Committee 4 will be on this side. Please head towards your computers now. I would like to remind you that you're still under parliamentary procedure and Robert's Rules of Order.
Good. I missed your opening remarks, but I gotta go talk to a coach. Excuse me, girls. Let me speak through here.
Yeah, hold on one second. Donating blood, that's the one I have you down. I'll move you down.
The minority caucus leaders, please bring their sheets to the clerk's desk. Thank you.
Yeah, but it's not sticking, so.
Mine kept falling off. I was like, come on. It's terrible.
Adrian Meridian. Up there.
I'm gonna go up there, I'm gonna go in the microphone, and I'm gonna fall back. Destroy Joey.
Yes.
It's gonna go,
It costs Americans over $200 million a year to prosecute.
as long as opposition goes first, it goes Gabe, Colleen, you.
Prosecuting process. Is that possible?
Well, that one I didn't get these 3 votes already.
We have all these. We already have all these speeches. Yeah. Although I don't know if they think. I don't know if they know you're doing it. Look at. I gave Bailey's a 5 out of 5. I gave yours a 10 out of 5. And at the end.
Gave it a 2.
What? No, I put. No. Wait a second. What is this? Before you bill, I put Colleen Suzanne. Did I spell your name right? I feel like it shouldn't take this long to vote.
Here, hold that. What's this?
That's Colleen's speech that I wrote for her.
Okay, and this is, okay.
That's her whole binder.
Robbie Smith. Okay, this is done. This is done. So, oh, no, no, no. Yeah, yeah, I already took it out. What's this? Okay, yeah. So, I have Gabe's, Colleen's, and mine. I have Ashley's just in case, but someone can read that up. I don't want her. She doesn't have to.
Ashley, we're not just not going
Okay,
to read Ashley.
okay.
So the order's going to go Caleb, Colleen, you, and then if there's time, Gabe.
Okay.
Are we going to be able to recall this for like see this on TV later?
I think it's on demand, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's either like immediately or a few days after.
Because I'm supposed to go show my mom stuff.
No, I intentionally didn't show my dad because I'm pretty sure he would come.
What is
Here, okay. Colleen?
No, it goes Caleb, Colleen.
Sorry. Thank you. That's what price goes. Oh, Caleb, Colleen. Yeah, but you need a reason to be vetoed. You can't veto because you don't like it. Yeah. She has to do it, yeah. Do it right now. Do it right now. Do it right now. Yeah.
He's not breaking any rules.
One less idiotic. Hey, how did I do on mine?
Registry 3 and 1.
Dude, this was the least prepared one that we were for. If we prepared for it, it would have kicked the shit out of it. But I was... No, you know what? Caleb's is good. Whatever you wrote for Colleen, I'm sure is good. And if you read mine, I talk about how long it takes. It's not an immediate change. I address 2 problems. Hopefully mine will be good. Yeah, I know. But well, yeah, but I mean, are those bad? I had make our bill the first one in full session, and yeah, we have to. Yeah, because that's what our bill is about, and I'm not hiding that. I'm telling you guys. If we pass this bill, it's not a big deal. But it's kind of sad we can't adjust the report. Yeah, we're running out of time.
Can I have your attention? With 65 yes votes, 23 no votes, and 10 abstains, the bill passes. There's also been brought to my attention that Mr. Victor Golden showed up late and is dressing adequately. so we'll now go to a vote to remove him. That's seconded. So will Committee 1 raise their hands in favor of removing? Committee 3, please raise their hand. Committee 4. Point of order, we are still in session. With 69 yeses, it passes. Victor Golden, please go to the administration office.
That's embarrassing. That's really embarrassing. That is embarrassing.
Thank you, Mr. Wright, and thank you, the Sergeant Arms. We will now go to House Bill 203, converting the United States for metric system. Can I please have Christopher Lopez to walk to the central podium?
My fellow congressmen and women, I strongly urge you to rise in support of our bill to convert the U.S. to a metric system over the course of a generation or so. In today's globally connected world, it is essential that the United States join the rest of the world or be left behind. Quoting a 1968 study by Congress on Metric America, a decision whose time has come, conversion to the metric system is in the best interest of our nation, particularly in the view of importance of foreign trade and the increasing influence of technology in American life. I believe that this would indeed be in the best interest of our nation in regards to the simplicity of the metric system and that our country is essentially halfway towards full metrication. In 1991, with the issuing of Executive Order 12770, the metric system was made the preferred system of weights and measurements for American trade and commerce, essentially converting U.S. global trade away from the U.S. standard system. Along with trade, the United States currently employs the use of the metric system in areas of science and medicine, the military, consumer goods, and is at least partially used in many other areas. Essentially, what I'm all sure you all want to know is how much is this going to cost, as many of you believe that this will cost too much and that the profit cannot compensate for the expense. In fact, it will cost us more to continue using a dual system of standard units and metric units. Using Britain as a real-life example, in the 1980 survey done by the Confederation of British Industry of its larger businesses, it found that the extra cost of continuing to work in dual systems was roughly $8 billion in today's currency. So why continue this pointless and expensive process of duality when we can start saving more money to bring our nation out of debt? American businesses will also be able to save a lot of money as well in the conversion to metric measurements. Take the company John Deere, for example. To give you a good idea of what can be accomplished, take specifically when John Deere converted to metric-sized sheet metal in the production of their combines and harvesters in the 1930s. Keep in mind that in the 1930s, our country was going through an economic depression, so nobody ever wanted to lose money during that period of time. In this conversion, John Deere ended up saving what is between $4.5 and $5.5 million in today's currency, as well as going metric did not cost them any additional money because the change was implemented at a time when the models were being redesigned and retooled. So as you can see, and we'll continue to hear through the next speeches, this bill is not going to further the debt of the United States, nor will it be a source of confusion for the current generation. This bill is a way to better the circumstances we are handing down to our future generations, to more globally integrate them with a world that's moving fast, and to create a better tomorrow for our nation. Thank you, and again urge you to rise in support of House Bill 203. I yield the remainder of my time to the Speaker.
Thank you. I will now yield 3 times to Mr. Temple for opposing arguments.
I'd have a point of information for Mr. Lopez, if you could please stand up to the mic, please. Just one quick question. You stated in your speech that John Deere saved $4.5 to $5.5 million.
Yes.
Can you state your source, please?
It was from an issue of USMA's Metric Today from 2008.
Thank you. I'll allow you the remainder of my time to Mr. Jordan.
All right, I'm here in opposition of House Bill 203, Metrication in the United States. This bill will enact a switch from the standard measurement system to the metric measurement system. The problem is, even if the U.S. goes metric, most of the larger companies in America will not. The government need to enforce and fund this across the United States, just like the struggling United Kingdom did, which made it a criminal offense to use the standard system, even though most of the country wants to go back to the standard system. Then in France, Napoleon Bonaparte said, "The scientists adopted the decimal system on a basis of metry as a unit. Nothing is more contrary to the organization of mind, memory, and imagination. The new system will be a stumbling block and a source of difficulties for generations to come." France is also only metric because of their legislation, just like the U.S. with Democrats in legislation at the moment. In order for the government to do this, they will have to raise taxes and cut major programs. The National Aeronautical Space Association and Boeing both use standard measurements, and they develop every space program and most military vehicles in service today. The uses for the standard unit measurement are also more effective. Many people believe the base 10 method is much easier. The method has no scientific or engineering advantage over the standard system. The only advantage is how much easier it is to make conversions, but this isn't relevant. If something is being measured in miles, you don't just wonder how many feet it is. If something's being measured in kilometers, you don't wonder how many centimeters it is. The base 10 method is also inferior unit measurement because of how few numbers that can be easily divided into it. The metric system is only better with decimals. The standard system is decimal friendly, and it's divisible by more numbers due to it being in 12s and 16s, which makes it a fraction friendly measurement. A good example of how powerful a standard measurement is time. Not one place in the world is measured in 100 seconds or 100 minutes. Another example would be temperature. Everything goes by Fahrenheit because the size of the degree in Fahrenheit is smaller than the size of the degree in Celsius, therefore a more accurate unit measurement. I yield my time back to Mr. Temple.
I'd like to reserve the remainder of my time. May I ask how much time that is reserved?
You have 35 seconds.
Thank you. I'll now yield the remainder of my time back to Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. I will now yield 3 minutes to Mr. Meridian for supporting arguments.
Thank you. And I'd like to yield 2 minutes of those to Mr. Pasley.
I rise in support of House Bill 203. House Bill 203 makes sense for the United States. However, there are 3 major concerns that many people have. The first one being the usefulness of this system. The U.S. right now is the only major country that doesn't use this system, and many people wonder, why should we even bother converting? Well, the metric system was created by scientists to be concise and effective, and it only uses 7 base units in contrast with the 20 that are used in the inches-pounds system. So it really makes sense to switch to this. It's easier for educational purposes, it's easier for conversion purposes, and it's easier for scientific purposes. Only 2 other countries in the world don't use this system. That's Burma, also known as Myanmar, and Liberia. I believe that speaks for itself. The next concern is the ability to convert. As was brought out, it's going to be done over a generation, which will make the transition smooth, logical, and effective. The cost, I'm not going to stand up here and tell you that it's going to be free. It's going to cost money, as will any process. But the costs will the benefits will greatly outweigh the costs. Right now, the European Union, which is one of the U.S. major trading partners, requires that we convert all units that we trade with them to the metric system. So switching will save us a lot of money because no longer will the machines be needed to do those conversions, and it'll save the U.S. a large sum of money in the long run. And as an added bonus, it will allow us to be technologically advanced and keep up with the rest of the world. In fact, in 1999, a Mars rover was lost in part due to a mistake between conversion. So that was a multi-million-dollar mistake. I'd like to take a brief moment to thank my sources, metricmetric.com and ehow.com, and I'd like to encourage each of you to vote yes for this bill.
Point of order, your time is up.
I yield the remaining time to Mr. Meridian.
You don't have any remaining time.
3 minutes. I used 2. I used 2 of the 3 minutes.
Okay.
I like to reserve the balance of my time.
Reserve this.
May I know how much that is?
Can you read that?
How much time did I retain?
You reserved 1 minute.
Thank you. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Meridian. I'll now yield 3 minutes for supporting arguments to Mr. Temple, plus if he wants to use any remainder of his time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to arise the issue of the cost. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't like paying taxes. I mean, obviously, and if we change it, street signs and all these things aren't free, like my colleague from across the aisle said. I don't know about you, but I don't want my taxes to be raised. They're already high enough, so that's why I don't like this. House Bill 203. And I'll yield the remainder of my time to Mr. Elson.
Hello, my fellow representatives. I stand before you today in opposition of Bill HB 203, Metrication of the United States. Switching the United States measurement system to all metric would be, from just about every standpoint, plain ridiculous. The U.S. has been using the imperial measurement system since 1824. That's 188 years of using the imperial measurement system. Imperial measurement is engraved in the United States veins. Every single road sign is an imperial measurement. That alone would cost billions to replace with metric measurements. Just consider every single mile marker sign, every road sign that indicates how far you are from your destination, every single speed limit sign. Again, you're talking billions of dollars to make that kind of change. And where is all of that money going to come from? That's right, the taxpayers, unhappy taxpayers at that. Making this kind of change will upset millions of people, and U.S. citizens have enough problems in everyday life as it is. Making this change will put one more everyday burden on their shoulders and one more unneeded tax. For instance, your car speedometer isn't set up in kilometers per hour, it is set up in miles per hour. Now, given the fact that almost all vehicles have kilometer per hour on their speedos, a much smaller print next to the miles per hour. But imagine you're driving and see a new kilometer per hour speed limit sign. And because this bill has been passed and put into motion, it would likely read 85 kilometers per hour, which is equivalent to 55 miles per hour. But all you might recognize is a sign's shape and number on it, and you don't think of this heinous new life-changing switch to the metric system, and you're going 85 miles per hour. Oops, that's 30 over, or a $250 speeding ticket. That would ruin my day, I know that. I'm not sure about you, but I don't have $250 laying around to give to the judicial system. And that's just one change. Think about going out and running errands, getting gas, not by gallons, but by quarts, and not getting a gallon of milk, it'd be around 1 quart of milk. Same with the temperature. Say it's a nice sunny summer day out and it's 70 degrees Fahrenheit. Well, if everything is to be changed to metric, 70 degrees Fahrenheit equals about 21 degrees Celsius. Now, obviously, you're going to realize that is meant that your thermometer is in Celsius, because there's no way it could be 21 degrees out in summer. But that's going to be an extremely annoying change, because every time you want to know the temperature, you're either going to have to memorize the Celsius degrees or convert Celsius to Fahrenheit every time you want to know the correct temperature. Because we all know what 70 degrees Fahrenheit feels like, but if the Weather Channel posts the temperature now in Celsius, it's going to read 21 degrees Celsius. You're not going to really know what to expect until you have all but memorized the Celsius temperatures. And even consider home air and heating. If your new heater is in Celsius and you use the Fahrenheit and you think, oh, 74 degrees sounds nice, and you set temperature to 74 degrees thinking it's Fahrenheit. Oops, that's actually 20 degrees Celsius and 165 degrees Fahrenheit.
Point of order, your time is up. Your reserve time is also.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
All right. I will now yield 3 minutes to Mr. Meridian for supporting arguments.
I'd like to yield 2 minutes of my time to Ms. Cowan.
Thank you very much. In response to the opposition, the standard system is indeed 188 years old. which just further proves the ineffectiveness and outdatedness of our current standard system. Does this mean that we should retain the use of other outdated measurements, such as the chain and the rod as well? The age of these almost ancient measurements shows just how long the United States has begun to lag in other global competitors, especially since the United States is no longer number one in many areas, including science and math, and is being bypassed by other advanced nations who have their eye towards progress. Also, you're misled about the costs associated with the metric system, told that it will only further our debt and take more money out of the taxpayers' pockets. In fact, the conversion of the road signs on roads and highways throughout the United States will most likely be at the least costly of any changes. Taxpayers already pay for work done on highways and roads, and these conversions will only occur when signs are due for a change. Therefore, no new and unnecessary costs are brought into the picture, but as the opposition seems to say, road signs have been changed for the last 188 years. As for your cars, there are no needs to worry about confusion with metric and road signs whatsoever. The bill is a process, not an overnight transformation. A slow process at that, and is set to occur over the course of 1 to 2 generations. And for the time being, to appease the current generation, both metric and standard systems will coexist beside each other. So no need to pay a $250 speeding ticket because you thought the metric system was a standard unit. Nor will you have to worry about all other aspects of change, whether it be consumer products or anything else. Consumer goods such as milk and other household food and drink items already include metric measurements alongside the standard units as per the Fair Packaging and Labeling Act. As a final reminder to you
Point
all.
of order, Colleen.
Yes?
Mr. Murray, you now have the floor. Your remainder of time is up.
I'd like to yield the rest of my time to Ms. Cowan.
Thank you. And as a final reminder to you all, enacting this bill will not confuse our current generation, and it will not put us into further debt, as it will not harm our nation. This bill will help to return our nation to its former glory as a world power, as it should be. Thank you. I yield my time to Mr. Murray. And I yield my time to the speaker.
Ms. Cowan, you didn't have the floor.
I'd like to yield the remainder of my time to Mr. Zorinsky.
Thank you, sir.
I would just like to point out to one of the comments that the opposing speech made about kilometers per hour. There are countries out there, such as Great Britain, that do use a hybrid system where they still measure grams, kilograms, and other units like that, but they measure distance for driving purposes still in miles per hour.
Mr. Zorinsky, your time is up. I would like to yield 3 minutes for closing arguments for the sake of time. We're using closing arguments, so Mr. Leshik, I yield you 3 minutes.
I urge you to vote yes for House Bill 203, changing the United States of America to metric. Like someone said for opposing, you said that NASA used the United States standard system. And the Mars Climate Orbiter probe in 2006 was a $125 million machine. And it was destroyed when it crashed into Mars because the altitude-controlled system used a standard system, while the navigational system used metric measurements. Changing the metric system will produce more trade with other countries, and that would make more income for our country. The metric measurements are used universally in multiple aspects of America's society, such as science, medicine, international coverage of sports like the Olympics, and consumer and retail. 95% of the world uses the metric system, and we are the only high power that doesn't use it. And like said in the opening remarks, when Britain had dual systems, it cost roughly $8 billion. Also said when John Deere switched from metric during the Depression, it saved him $4.5 to $5.5 million. And over a period of time, this is going to be changed. So like opposing remarks said, like the speed limit thing, there's going to be 2 signs for it. There's going to be the kilometers per hour and the miles per hour. So if you read the signs wrong, you probably shouldn't be driving. Again, I urge you to support House Bill 203. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Point of order, he still has the floor. Thank you, I didn't hear it.
Thank you for your speech. We will now go into recess for 3 minutes before a vote.
Yeah, you're cutting out of time, right?
Yeah, but we decided on 2-3 minutes for your bill, and after Shelby gave her speech, I thought that it wouldn't get passed because Shelby actually had a good speech. So I actually gave you those 2 rounds for your bill. Okay? So if you, I actually saw that come with this too.
Oh, Homo's donating blood is next.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll do 3 rounds.
3 minutes?
3 rounds, 3 minutes.
Okay, for this one? Allowing gays to donate blood.
This is all for?
Yeah, for it. Allowing gays to donate blood.
Allowing gays to donate blood?
You're last. We might not get to you. Prostitution.
A lot of concern on whether or not if this bill was passed that it was raised taxes for Americans, and that is something that would definitely be of concern. And I would also like to point out that a quart is part of the English system, not the metric. We would be buying gasoline in liters. So.
All right, so I'm here with Chris Lopez, one of the authors of the bill, and I want to ask a couple questions for you today. Well, how long is the projected time for the U.S. to convert from the system that we originally have now to the metric system?
As said in the bill, to appease the current generation and to make the transition as smooth as possible, the switch is projected to occur over the course of a generation or so as not to confuse the current generation and a sudden conversion, and to educate the next generation in the system of the metrics.
All right, and also we were talking about road signs earlier. What is up with that?
I think that most of the opposition is confused. They believe that the road signs will only be in metric, so therefore they think that they'll see a kilometer sign and think it's miles per hour, when in fact both signs will coexist alongside each other, and they will definitely have different markings so as people can distinguish between the two.
All right. How will metrication increase the use and importance of technology?
It'll increase the use and importance of technology because it'll allow us to become more globally integrated with a metricated nation. Therefore, it'll increase the cohesion with other countries who currently use the metric system, as well as expanding our options of trade and partnership with other countries.
Well, thank you, Mr. Lopez, for your time.
We will now begin voting. Please go to your respective computers.
All right, so I will be asking a couple of questions for you right now. All right, so the customary system is used by Americans every day, the average American. And so how do you think by converting the to the metric system it'll confuse all the Americans?
Well, I just think that most of the Americans are not going to be educated on the conversions. Like my colleague was saying, he was saying that it just the elderly people and stuff, they're not gonna know all the conversions. They're not gonna know what everything feels like. They're not gonna know all that kind of stuff. So it's not gonna work for the older generations. And for the younger generations, we're gonna have to be paying taxes for our whole lives just for this. So.
And what do you think, as opposition to this bill, the projected time for everyone to make the full conversion to the metric system?
Well, I don't know. I don't know the exact date when Britain did it, but they're still making the full conversion right now. So I don't know how long it would actually take.
All right. All right. You said that the customary system has a more accurate little measurements.
Yeah.
Would you like to say anything about that?
All I'd say is the metric system is a base 10 method. That means everything goes by tens, like the conversions and everything. For the standard system, we go by like 12s and 16s. So that means that the fraction of like a degree or like a centimeter or something, the degree would be smaller, so it'd be more effective. It'd be more, I don't know how to explain it. It's more accurate there. Let's go with that.
All right. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks.
Colleen, do you want to talk for this? Colleen?
Allowing
All right, Colleen. Who else? Well, I put them in order. So these up here, they're all good. From down here, they're not. I just put you down as a closing. Joey Elson is supporting this? Oh my gosh. Yeah. That's ridiculous. Angie doesn't want to talk. So, I mean, hers it's not that great, but.
Oh, I can't wait to get questions for prostitution. I'm already geared up for freaking. Do you want me to go get him for this? Yeah.
So you want to go first? Elson will go.
Mine fell off.
So I'm speaking first for interrogation method?
Yeah, we're just getting everyone that's gonna speak. Sir. My pen, sir. Is Emily speaking to Sarah? I don't know. Emily Robbins?
What, this? Car insurance. I don't remember.
If no one volunteers. Is it against?
No, it's for. Or I just need a copy of it.
I like how all of these are like guys and all the against are girls.
Yeah, I know.
Well, it's because lower guys and raise girls. Not gonna let me. Not real.
Point of order. With 47 yeses, 43 noes, and 8 abstains, House Bill 203 fails. now go to House Bill 201, allowing homosexuals to donate blood. I will yield 5 minutes to Melissa Schakowsky. And Lenny Adel.
Currently in the United States, men who have sex with men are unable to donate blood. But on average, the blood shortage in the United States is 44,000 units a day. There may be some who completely oppose homosexuals being allowed to donate blood, but why? Do they believe homosexuals automatically have sexually transmitted diseases just because of their sexual orientation? In 1977, when the policy was enacted, it was assumed that men who have had sex with men are more likely to have AIDS or HIV, diseases that are contracted and passed through blood. Although in 2009, 49% of Americans who were diagnosed with these diseases were men who have had sex with men, leaving over half of the infected population heterosexual. Heterosexuals have just as much of a chance of contracting HIV if they do not take precautions with their sexual partners. Before blood is sent to the hospital, at least 8 separate tests are performed on the blood to ensure it's free of viruses. All blood is tested for HIV, AIDS, hepatitis B, and C, syphilis, and other infectious diseases after it is donated and before being released to hospitals. HIV detection tests and procedures for screening donated blood have improved greatly since 1977, and blood shortages have become common. The highly sensitive nucleic acid test, which U.S. blood banks introduced in 1999, will pick up HIV infections that occurred as recently as 12 days before the test. 5 tubes of blood are collected during blood donation and sent to the lab that same evening to be tested for HIV and other viruses. If an initial test is reactive or seems to be positive, scientists retest the blood the next day, but they discard all the blood from that donation either way. Such precautions are an effective way to reduce the transmission of HIV, even if the donors don't tell the truth about their medical or sexual history, leaving the question, why not let these healthy men donate?
There is absolutely nothing to lose. There are 44,000 units of blood needed each day, and allowing the 50,000 healthy homosexual men turned away every year to donate blood would make up for the 44,000 units of needed blood. It would cost the federal government absolutely no money to test the blood. The organization in which a person donates blood with pays and usually does all of the testing on the blood, making it free for both the donor and the government. Which only leaves one more question. Do people oppose this because they believe it is immoral? The real immorality of this subject is the discrimination and cost of lives. It is obvious that there are no acceptable reasons to discriminate against homosexuals donating blood. Any opposing arguments are heavily countered with supportive facts. As the Declaration of Independence states, all men are created equal. The discrimination against people based on their sexual preference cannot stand in the way of saving the lives of thousands who desperately need blood transfusions from our country's very limited supply every day. Make a difference. You can save lives by supporting our bill. HB 201.
All right, thank you. I will now yield 3 minutes to Mr. Temple for opposing arguments.
I'll now yield 3 minutes of my time to Mrs. Soto.
Thank you. In the United States, men who have sex with men are still subject to a lifetime ban on donating blood. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration implemented this ban in 1983 after an estimated 10,000 people with the bleeding disorder hemophilia became infected with an HIV through transfusions of HIV-tainted blood. The FDA estimates that the HIV prevalence is 60 times higher in men who have sex with men than the general public, and 800 times higher than the first-time donors, who are typically healthier than the general public. By introducing a population with such a heightened risk for HIV into the donor pool, it becomes more likely that someone will donate who is HIV positive and doesn't realize it. Although we do test blood, an administrative error can occur, causing blood to be accidentally released into the bloodstream through an incinerator. The more likely donations are to be infected, the higher the chances are that mistakes are going to happen. If the ban is lifted altogether, we run into the problem that the current lab test
can detect HIV infection only if it's been at least 10 days since exposure. At least 10 days. Not just saying 10, at least 10. That means that someone who has just become infected with HIV could come in to donate blood and test negative. And then that blood would then be put into a recipient who is innocent, who needs blood, and now we are tainting them because of the stigma that gay men feel. That's more of a possibility that the higher risk population for men can now become put into the donor pool. This ban is not a homophobic ban at all. There are many reasons people are not allowed to donate blood. If you are under 17, unless you have parent consent at 16, you're not allowed to donate blood. If you're pregnant, you shouldn't donate blood. If you've had a tattoo within the last 12 months, they will not allow you to donate blood. You have to wait 12 months after treatment for syphilis or gonorrhea to donate blood. Just because you are homosexual does not mean that is the only reason you cannot donate blood. This is not a homophobic bill whatsoever. We understand the argument that reconsidering the policy regarding men who have sex with men because gay men feel stigmatized by it. But if the policy is changed to relieve the stigma, you have a risk that is transferred to a completely different group. Innocent recipients who need blood to live. Gay men are still living, not because they don't have the right to donate blood. The recipients may die if they don't get blood.
Point of order, your time is up.
Thank you.
I now yield 3 minutes to Mr. Meridian for supporting arguments.
Thank you. I'd like to say that if the machine doesn't work and the test can't identify the HIV, it doesn't matter whether you're gay or straight, the blood still won't be recognized. And you have to take a questionnaire. If someone who's gay lies and says they're straight, and it checks out in the questionnaire, they still get to donate blood. And once it gets sent off, you can't find it. It's no different than anyone else's blood. But that's just a note I wanted to make. I'd like to yield 1 minute of my time to Ms. Cowan.
Thank you very much. In the United States, there's a deficit between who is giving blood and those who need the blood that is being donated. Blood transfusions are necessary for a large group of people. Yet homosexual individuals are currently banned from donating themselves, and I believe that this is ridiculous and backwards. Please pass House Bill 201. Every blood sample, no matter who it is donated by, is subjected to rigorous testing before being used in transfusions. These tests test for legitimately any type of harmful substances or infection known to modern science. The fear many have is that homosexual blood donors may carry HIV and that it is thus transmitted to other patients. Yet this blood will undergo the same rigorous testing just like any other sample would be. The origin of the current law on the subject stems from the AIDS epidemic of the 1980s, where a vast majority of HIV-infected individuals were those in the homosexual community. Yet in 2010, the CDC recently reported that the majority of those people being affected by HIV in the present day are straight African-American
Point of order, your
males.
time is up. Your 1 minute is up. Mr. Meridian, you now have the floor.
I'd like to yield the remainder of my time to Ms. Cowan.
Thank you. Are African-American males. Yet a law banning them from donating blood would cause a national outrage. The current legislation on this topic is archaic and ignorant. I'm a strong believer in equal rights for the homosexual community, and this law is no different. The demand for blood to be used in transfusions far exceeds the current supply. It's time for us to wake up. It's 2012, not 1983 anymore. It is said that each blood donation saves about 3 lives, so imagine how many more we could save if we were to legalize House Bill number 201. Thank you.
I'd like to balance the rest of my time. Mr. Speaker, you have the floor.
Can you please repeat that? I'm sorry.
You have the floor.
All right, thank you. I will now yield 3 minutes. What? I'll now yield 3 minutes to Mr. Temple for opposing argument.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yes, this policy is old, but I don't know about you guys, but I trust the FDA. I trust the Food and Drug Administration, the people that inspect your food and your drugs. So if this policy was, as stated, upside down, clearly they would have done something by now to change it. But obviously something is wrong with homosexuals' blood, so Clearly, the Food and Drug Administration doesn't see anything wrong with this. I'd like to yield 1 minute of time to Ms. Lasorda.
Point of order, a representative cannot speak twice for a bill. That is according to the RAM.
Okay, then I'll yield the remainder of my time to Mr. Andrew.
My fellow representatives, I ask you to rise in opposition to House Bill 201. Men who have had sex with other men at any time since 1977, the beginning of the AIDS epidemic in the United States, currently deferred as blood donors. This is because the FDA has concluded that MSM are as a group at increased risk for HIV. Hepatitis B and certain other infections that can be transmitted by transfusion are also another problem. A history of male-to-male sex is associated with an increased risk for presence and transmission of certain infectious diseases, including HIV, the virus that causes AIDS. The FDA's policy is intended to protect all people who receive blood transfusions from an increased risk of exposure to potentially infected blood and blood products. HRC believes that the integrity and safety of the blood supply in this country must be preserved, strengthened, and maintained, and that any change or alteration in the regulations governing donors' suitability must be based on sound science. HRC proposes that the federal government invest in new research to study high-risk behavior, and then based on the findings, consider revising it. And they also ask that they focus on more refined and specific behavioral criteria which affect the prevalence of blood-borne diseases. I now yield the remainder of my time to Mr. Temple.
Thank you, Mr. Randall. Now, with that point of order I had earlier, it clearly says if there are no other requests from other representatives to speak, then a representative may speak twice on the same bill. I have no requests, so she has every right to speak twice. Thank you. I yield the remainder of my time to Ms. Lasorda.
Although there are many gay men who would like to give blood, giving HIV-positive blood is killing people. Besides the fact, okay, here's some blood, I've got blood. Okay, yeah, it's HIV, you're gonna die from my blood, but here you go. Like, who is going to do that? And if the 50,000 or whatever the number is of gay men come to give blood, they're not gonna be able to test it all on the same day. And it's the first couple that they test are gonna be negative and they're gonna give it out. And then after that, at least 10 days or so, oh, it tests positive, and now they're trying to retract blood that they've already given people.
Your time is up. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I will now yield 3 minutes to Mr. Meridian for supporting arguments.
Thank you. I'd like to yield 1 minute of my time to Ms. Robbins.
Good morning, my fellow committee members. I'm speaking on behalf of Sarah Stober. I rise in support of HB 201, allowing homosexuals to donate blood due to the fact that our blood donations aren't sufficient enough to fulfill the needs of patients in dire need. There is no logical reasoning behind not allowing homosexuals to donate. Blood transfusions are greatly needed, and denying a person the natural right to do as they please and help others is extremely biased and backwards. Whether a person is gay or not, they should be allowed to donate blood just the same as any other straight heterosexual would. Having the blood tested as it already is before all transfusions for regular donors makes no difference as to whether the donor is a homosexual or not. The fact that a person is not allowed to assist those in needs is based off their sexuality is appalling to this day and age, as well as simple discrimination. People can't choose their sexual orientation, but people can die without blood from a transfusion simply because a homosexual person is not allowed to donate blood for them. Allowing others to die for denying basic rights.
Point of order. Ms. Robbins only have 1 minute. Her 1 minute is up.
I'd like to yield another minute to Ms. Robbins.
Allowing others to die by denying basic rights to all humans is not only inhumane but incredibly ignorant and old-fashioned. This is an appalling flaw in society and we need to change it now. I again urge you to support HB 201 because we simply cannot afford losing human lives over basic gay rights and a health issue. I yield my time to Mr. Meridian.
Okay. Research shows that ending the ban could add 219,000 pints a year. Men who acknowledge having sex with an HIV-positive woman or a prostitute are banned for only 1 year before they can donate blood. And a straight person who has unsafe sex with multiple partners can still donate blood, which creates a much greater risk to a man who is in a monogamous relationship. This clearly shows the discrimination based off this law. And I'd like to yield the rest of my time to Mr. Elson.
Please make it clear to me how a homosexual's blood may differ from anyone else's. You can't is the correct answer to that question. If you compare a straight person's blood and a homosexual's blood side by side under a telescope, you will not be able to see any kind of difference because there is literally no way you can tell. Your sexuality does not in any way, shape, or form change your blood type. Some people of lesser knowledge may think so, but that's because they have done absolutely no research and have no common sense. In fact, studies show that a straight person's blood is more prone to being found with an STI than a gay or lesbian person's. A straight person's blood is 52% more likely to have an STI, while a homosexual's is 49%. So if anything,
Your time is up.
Yep, all right.
Point of information, please, to Mr. Elson.
CDC.com or something. .gov.
All right, that's also going to ask. Thank you.
We'll now go into a 3-minute recess before the vote. Or no, sorry, no. Sorry, there's 3 minutes closing argument to Mrs. Voss. My apologies.
Okay, hello everyone. These policies were put into place in the 70s. Times have changed and the testing process has improved immensely. Heterosexuals can have HIV as well as giving just as much possibility of tainted blood from the heterosexual as a homosexual. All of the blood is tested. Looking at heterosexual and homosexual blood, it looks the exact same. Any infected blood is deterred and not available for donation. In response to the Congresswoman who said that the bill is to relieve the stigma placed on homosexual men, that's not really true. Although we do rise against a stereotype, that is not the goal of our bill. Our bill was designed to save lives and fulfill the blood donations needed every day in our country. Statistics from the opposing arguments from the FDA are also, in fact, out of date. Our 2010 CDC report says that the majority of HIV infected are straight. That's heterosexual, not homosexual. In 1977, when the policy was enacted, it was assumed that men who have sex with men are more likely to have AIDS or HIV, diseases that are contracted and passed through the blood. Although in 2009, it was said that 51% of Americans who were diagnosed with diseases were men that are in fact heterosexual. Heterosexual has the majority of people that have HIV. Before blood is sent to hospitals, at least 8 separate tests are performed on the blood to ensure it is free of viruses. People, there are 44,000 units of blood needed each day, and allowing the 50,000 healthy homosexual men who are turned away every year to donate blood, that would make up for the desperately needed donations. It would cost the federal government absolutely no money. So why are we not doing this? It's going to save lives, and there's in fact nothing stopping these lives from being saved except the stigma that homosexuals are more likely to have HIV, which in fact our statistics prove false. Thank you.
All right, thank you for your closing remarks. Now I'll go into recess for 3 minutes.
If you don't want to talk about the analysis, if you just wanted to interview Bailey, because I have... As Ms. Chakowski stated in her opening statement, is this a moral argument, or is this actually truly about health? 44,000 units of blood is needed every day, and all blood is tested at no cost, and this bill would basically just reap benefits. And as Ms. Lasota stated, this was not a homophobic bill, but just a few minutes later, her partner
Jake Temple said that there must be something wrong with homosexual blood if it has not been used to help others.
Are we ready for Bailey?
Bailey.
Hi, Bailey. Hi. All right. So I'm here with Bailey Lasota, who was opposing the bill. So I just have a couple questions for you. Okay. So along with their statistics, there's also statistically proven that women, specifically African American women, have the highest HIV rate and not gay men. So knowing this, what makes the homosexuals any different or more prominent?
Men who have sex with men are 60 times more likely, 800 times more likely than first-time donors, who are generally healthier than the general public. So we weren't saying that every gay person has HIV or AIDS or an STD. We're just saying that it's more likely to happen, and that making the pool more likely to have an HIV then makes the pool risky, and that's not fair to the recipients who haven't done anything that need blood.
Okay. I had another question. What do you have? They have a law where if you have straight men who have sex with a prostitute, they only have 1 year. You know, they can't donate blood for 1 year, but homosexuals can't donate for life because of that. So, again, you know, for the fact that they can only donate for 1 year, does it have anything to do with the moral standard? Do you think?
The morals of being a prostitute? Or the...
Well, both.
Is that in Illinois? Or is that everywhere?
I believe it is a... No, I believe it is a national, from my understanding.
Okay. I'm just asking. That is something that has come up, but nothing that has been like, this will change it, this is going to happen. What we're saying is that we can't take that chance to put HIV positive blood into an innocent recipient. That's just a chance that I'm not willing to take.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Hey, what's in here? Oh, okay. Do you mind if I put it down here? Yeah, go for it.
Are you kidding me right now? You get nothing.
Yeah, I know. You too.
Dakota.
You're talking to the mic. Abby over. Oh yeah, I don't have your bill because I couldn't view it. Yeah, you put it on the motor, right? Yeah. know I saw your name, right? For interrogate. Is that the one you want to do?
Yeah, but I'm against it, so do I go on this side then?
Yeah, because this side is against it. It's a Republican thing, so come over here. I'll get someone to come get you when when that comes up.
An hour and 40 minutes until we have to go to lunch.
No, I know. We're not gonna make it.
Well, at least we'll get to prostitution.
I don't know birds we're supposed to go through today.
You know what? Let it go.
No, 7 total.
Don't be nervous.
This is your. I think it's 406. 1 second. Yeah, 406. Adrian, yes. What are you talking about?
Temple. Oh, hey.
Hour and 39 minutes. I'm gonna like hit my hand on the thing like Hitler. 999, that's good enough.
What goes next? Prostitution?
Yeah. Huh? This, yeah. No, I know. It was on the schedule. We already know about this. This isn't new to us.
What class are you in? What class are you in?
I thought you were the one who said it.
Okay.
You so like, no one else is going for him, like, dude, no, I'm kind of glad. Nick is ready for someone to give him a shoe signal. He's provoked people, like, come on. So if you were to push Nick would just...
I'm thinking about all the people around him.
Jerry. Don't worry, we're not from the 80s. What? Just to make the joke that Charlie would have been dead.
Attention. 69 yes votes, 23 no votes, and 6 abstains. The bill passes. We are now back in session 2 and following Robert's Rules of Orders.
How much time do you want?
Keep going. Keep going.
are now moving on to House Bill 406, legalizing prostitution. I will now yield 5 minutes of time for Mr. Gigiano for opening remarks.
Thank you. Imagine a woman, bruised and bleeding, clinging to life, laying naked in a dark, dirty alleyway. She was just left there by her customer, who decided to take advantage of this poor, defenseless woman. Just trying to make money to feed her kids and make it through the day. House Bill 406 would protect women in the prostitute business from treatment like this. It would give them an out from the dirty underground system of prostitution. It would also help to cut down on underground sex slave rings, which consists of girls being kidnapped and sold into this business. ECPAT USA, which is an organization of ending child prostitution, child pornography, and trafficking of children for the sexual purposes, and anti-trafficking agency, states that the average age of entry into this business for children when they take them is 12 to 14, and some even as young as 9. A child under the age of 18 years old who is commercially sexually abused is a victim of trafficking. However, under some local laws, a child is charged with child prostitution. So these laws make it to where if girls try to go to the police and they were kidnapped and forced to do this, they're not allowed to. They have nothing to do and they will be charged. I urge you to vote on House Bill 406 so situations like these two I just mentioned cease to exist. Thank you very much.
Point of order, Mr. Gigiano still has the floor.
Thank you. I'll now yield 3 minutes for opposing remarks. Mr. Meridian, you have the floor. Or, no.
It goes to the opposition.
All right. For Mr. Temple, you have opposing remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll now yield 3 minutes of time to Ms. San Miguel.
Thank you. My fellow committee members, I stand in complete and firm opposition for House Bill 406, the regulation and legalization of prostitution. Let me tell you a story of a young girl around our age who weeks ago just lost her mother to cancer. I was desperate, vulnerable, and felt like I was drowning. When I searched for a lifeline, I grabbed the first thing that came my way. When the money started hitting my hand, I felt like I had finally found my power in the world. But quickly the money went through my hands and into the pocket of my boyfriend, and the percentage fee I had to pay to work increased. He soon began to manipulate and maintain my money. He paid our bills and tried to protect me. Most nights I wouldn't even bother counting the hundreds that I had made. Not only was I subjected to humiliation, assault, and robbery, the emotional impact had hit me hard. Although I was miserable and could not spend my own money, I convinced myself that I had found my power. Looking out from the outside, you would think I was happy and I had it all. But really inside, I was drowning. I had the education of an 8th grader, and I have never seen a $100 bill until I started working as a prostitute. I was a machine, a robot, having sex up to 10 times a day or night. I worked in calls for many years and felt like I had the world on my shoulders. There, at a time, I convinced myself that I did not care if I was a prostitute. I had given up my job, my dream job of working with children. I told myself I was good at what I did and that I couldn't do anything else in the world. I knew how to please men, even if it killed me. At night, I would come home, shower, and scrub, and try to get the streets off me. I hated being touched by the tricks. My mantra was to get the money out, was to get my money and get out. but inside I was dying. Here's another story of a 40-year-old woman who recently just got out of the cycle. I am a survivor, and I can say with the authority that no sex is worth pain. I was shot 5 times, stabbed over 13 times, beaten several times, had my arm and nose broken, and 2 teeth knocked out, and a child that I will never be able to see again. Why would anyone subject someone to this? This form of torture, legal or not legal, anyone that's sucked into this world is forever trapped. Why make something so degrading and so humiliating legal? Aren't we as Americans supposed to be looking out for our fellow neighbors? Now, I'd like everyone to take the time to think about one female in their life, whether that is your mother, your sister, aunt, cousin, or girlfriend. How would you like if you knew that they were trapped into this and you sat back and watched everything unfold, knowing that they are being abused mentally, physically, and emotionally?
Point of order, your time is up. Thank you. I will now yield 3 minutes to Mr. Meridian for supporting arguments.
I'd like to yield all my time to Ms. Cowan.
Thank you very much. My committee members, I stand here today to address an issue that has been a controversial topic for hundreds of years, prostitution, and I strongly believe prostitution should be legalized. Prostitution is illegal in nearly every county in the United States, except for some small counties in Nevada, which hold special licenses for owning certified brothels. Yet, these businesses have been a huge success and have stimulated the local economy. But many people are somehow against the legalization of prostitution, and while their arguments may seem logical, emotional, and reasonable, but in theory, they seem to fall apart after the correct facts and figures have been presented. One of the most presenting issues against prostitution have been the health and safety of both the workers and their customers, but making prostitution legal would actually make the sex trade much safer. Workers would have an opportunity to be upfront with their healthcare providers without the fear of legal ramifications, thus providing better treatment and preventative care. Also, making prostitution legal would allow the government to mandate STD and STI testing in order to protect both the worker and the customer. From an economic point of view, legalizing prostitution would be beneficial to the United States economy. Brothels would become a legitimate business, which in turn would be taxed. Also, according to the national crime statistics, the persecution and legal fees of the sex trade, on average, cost Americans over $200 million a year. Prostitution, when it's illegal, is extremely dangerous. According to the national statistics, the average prostitute is physically assaulted over 18 times per month. However, they are unable to go to the police for help, so the abuse goes on. In poor areas, girls who are often raised in abusive households are prime targets for pimps, who act almost as slave owners to these young girls, some young as age 10 or 11 years old, and make sure they are unable to escape through their physical and verbal abuse. If prostitution becomes legal, these girls will be able to seek the help they need without being punished themselves. While all of these arguments are extremely important, one very key argument has not been brought up yet. It is your own free will. If any man or woman wants to be able to sell their bodies, they should be allowed to. If you don't agree in prostitution, the solution for you is simple. Don't become a prostitute and don't purchase their services. It is their own body and their own lives, and another person or government institution should not be able to control another person's body. If it doesn't agree with your morals, then don't participate. Simple as that. As stated before, I strongly believe prostitution should be federally legalized. The health, safety, and economics are too strong to ignore any longer. Please pass House Bill 406.
Hey, Colleen. Thank you. I'd like to yield the rest of my time to Mr. Torrance.
Ladies and gentlemen of the third legislative semester, I urge you to vote yes for House Bill 406 to legalize prostitution in the United States. Right now, as I speak here before you, young men and women around the world are being abducted and forced to work in the underground sex trade business. This will help that horrid business decrease.
Point of order, your time is up. Thank you.
Okay.
I'll now yield 3 minutes to Mr. Temple for closing arguments.
I yield all of my time to Ms. Schmidt.
Hello. I'd just like to point out, as my fellow congressman said, no one chooses to be a prostitute. With that in mind, I strongly disagree with House Bill 406, which would permit the regulation and legalization of prostitution.
What did you want to be when you grew up? A ballerina? A veterinarian? An astronaut? Naturally, since this initial career choice, we have all changed our minds many times. We have also been lucky enough to not even consider prostitution as a method to provide for ourselves. Unfortunately, many prostitutes who once had dreams just like us of becoming astronauts have been forced to resort to prostitution to survive. In fact, in a recent study by the University of Rhode Island, of the 40 million prostitutes, 92% of prostitutes want to get out of prostitution but cannot due to lack of food or money. On average, a prostitute is beaten at least 12 times per year, and 58% of American prostitutes reported violent sexual assault by their clients. The murder rate for an American prostitute is 204 for every 100,000. About 50% of prostitutes throughout the world have contracted the HIV virus, and 6 to 8% of the STDs are related to the prostitution in the U.S. There are absolutely no benefits to legalizing prostitution in any of its forms. All it produces is diseases and harm to those individuals. We as humans deserve more. We deserve more than selling our bodies. We deserve to be with someone who actually cares about us and can remember our name. One prostitute in Melissa Farley's book, Prostitution, Trafficking, and Traumatic Stress, was quoted saying, "I feel like I imagine people who are in concentration camps feel when they get out. It is a real deep pain, and assaults my mind, my body, my dignity as a human being. I feel what was taken away from me in prostitution is irretrievable." In regard to the pending bill for the semester, Melissa Farley, PhD, the founding director of Prostitution Research and Education, wrote, "The regulation of prostitution by zoning is a physical manifestation of the same social psychological stigma that decriminalization advocates allegedly want to avoid. Reflecting the social isolation of those in it, prostitution is often removed from the mainstream, whether in Turkish Genevieve's walled-off multi-unit brothel complexes or in Nevada brothels ringed with barbed wire or electric fencing. Women in state-zone prostitution are physically isolated and socially rejected by the rest of society. I believe that whatever guidelines are set for the legalization and regulation of prostitution, they will never amount to the change or betterment of this abusive and dehumanizing industry." Which brings me to my final point. After reviewing House Bill 402's Part 2 section, in which the committee members were supposed to discuss why prostitution was a problem and how their bill would solve that problem, they gave no solution. That's because the legalization and regulation of prostitution isn't the solution.
Point of order, your time is up. Thank you.
I'd like to say that...
I'll now yield 3 minutes to Mr. Meridian
Thank you.
for supporting arguments.
I'd like to say that they gave us statistics on the numbers against this bill, but if we legalized it, then those death rates will decrease because then they can go to the police because it's legal. They won't get sent in jail. So with that said, I'd like to let Mr. Torrance finish. I'll yield him 1 minute
Point of
of
order,
my time.
please save Torrance to the end according to Article 4, Section 1G.
Okay, then Ms. Lasota has 3 minutes or the remainder of my time.
Prostitution may be the world's oldest profession, and laws prohibiting prostitution may well be the oldest example of government regulation and government sex discrimination. In a free society, however, all such laws are inappropriate because they violate the basic rights and liberties of the individuals involved. The third most common way for American males to contract the AIDS virus is through illegal prostitution. According to current evidence, roughly half of the street prostitutes in Washington, D.C. and New York City are HIV positive. In Newark, New Jersey, the estimate is that close to 60% of all prostitutes are carrying the AIDS virus. Yet, in the relatively free market of free and legal prostitution of Nevada, not one, as of 1989, of the state licensed prostitutes have ever tested positive for AIDS. Aside from blood tests done in Nevada once every month, the reason is economic. The bordellos, which is what they call their prostitutes, compete with each other, and suppliers have strong incentives to ensure that the service that their customers is getting is safe. Clearly, the spread of AIDS would be reduced by decriminalizing of prostitution services. It is estimated that 1 in every 10 police officers works on vice-related activities. It is assumed that 1/2 of the typical urban city's prison females population are prostitutes. This money that we as taxpayers are paying towards prisons could go to people that are actually doing something wrong. Prostitution is the voluntary sale or rental of a labor service. Individuals own their own bodies and their own labor services and have absolute right to do what they would like with their body. According to a study done by Rand Corporation, the city of Los Angeles' policy of shooing away streetwalkers has done nothing except push them over city boundaries. We are doing nothing but moving them around. In a free market for prostitution services, suppliers of labor services that are physically harmed would have the same rights to police protection and legal recourse as the rest of us. Government prohibition and regulation blatantly violates the rights of individuals and are economically expensive. We could be using...
Point of order, your time is up.
Thank you.
I'll now yield 3 minutes to Mr. Temple for opposing arguments.
If everyone would open up their bill packet to House Bill 406, I'd like to bring up to point Part 4, permissions and costs associated with this bill. Yes, it's a human right to be able to sell your body, but I'm all for the benefit of the people and the benefit of the government. We are in a deficit, people. We're over $15 trillion in debt. And nowhere in this bill does it say that any money used for this regulation of prostitution, that money would be helping the government. I don't see any benefits in this bill. So, I'm all for the idea. Don't judge. But there's absolutely zero benefits to this bill, which is why I urge you all to vote no to House Bill 406. And I'll yield the remainder of my time to Ms. Galetta.
Hello, my fellow committee members. I rise in opposition to House Bill 406. How can any woman support sex abuse labeled prostitution is beyond me. How can any decent man would allow his name to be associated with any legalization or a petition for such a thing is comprehensible. Prostitution is a sin. It destroys marriages, corrupts men, and leads to the widespread of infectious diseases. I wish the liberals would stop deluding themselves that Amsterdam or whatever is a model for the U.S. The only people who support this sort of thing are looking to make a few bucks from the outrageous enterprise, or else they're sexually perverted men looking to justify their draining of the family's bank accounts in pursuit of their unchecked physical urges. Legalizing prostitution increases the sexual assault of children in prostitution. Therefore, it should not be legal. The worst thing about prostitution is not its social stigma. It is rape, strangulation, beatings, toxic verbal abuse, or other violences from johns and pimps. Extreme and frequent violence was committed against 3 women over the course of their lives. 79% had been sexually assaulted by an average of 4 perpetrators. 92% had been raped. 84% had been physically assaulted in prostitution. 72% had suffered traumatic brain injuries from violence in prostitution. Most discussions of the public health risks of prostitution have focused on sexually transmitted diseases. A recent editorial in a major medical journal acknowledged the danger of violence of those prostituted, yet concluded that the overall health risks of street prostitution were minimal. Most prostitutes develop post-traumatic stress disorder after having a bad experience. It's a cruel lie to suggest that decriminalization or legalization will protect anyone in prostitution. It is not possible to protect anyone whose source of income exposes them to the likelihood of being raped on a verge of once a week. So vote no to prostitution. I yield my time to Jake Temple. Mr. Temple.
I'd like to reserve the remainder of my time, please. Wait, is that the last? Is that the last round here?
That's the last round.
Okay, and then I'll keep going. And also in Part 4 it says LA is estimated to spend $100 million a year. That's in LA, folks. I don't know if my geography's off, but I believe we are in Marengo, Illinois, not Los
Order, your time
Angeles,
is up.
California. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll now yield 3 minutes for Mr. Meridian for supporting arguments.
Thank you. If you look in your bill packet, you can see in Part 4 where it talks about the cost. They have it stating that Los Angeles estimates to spend $100 million a year on enforcing anti-prostitution laws and court fees. And it continues by stating that this is provided by tax money. So if we legalize this, we save that much money per year. And it can be used to invest into education, into funding for police forces, whatever it may be. I'd like to yield 2 minutes of my time to Mr. Lopez.
I'm speaking on behalf of another representative. It's estimated that if prostitution were legalized in the United States, the rape rate would decrease by roughly 25%, which is approximately 25,000 rapes per year. I don't see any harm in that, do you? Why is prostitution a crime? Prostitutes are not engaging in a harmful act. It is two adults who understand what they are doing and are giving mutual consent to one another. So how can they be punished for something that would be consensual? So if you want to do it, it's their choice, not ours. So let them do what they want to do. Also, you can tax it so that will help get rid of the present debt in the United States. Government can help regulate testing for the prostitutes for diseases so that they don't get passed around. Some people need money, so prostitution can help them make their payments. I urge you, committee members, to vote yes to Bill 406. And also, all I've been hearing from the opposition are the current problems that are involved with prostitution. What the opposition has been stating is exactly what this bill is attempting to fix. So, if anything, I believe that they help the cause for this bill. Thank you. I yield the rest of my time back to Mr. Meridian.
Thank you. Guys, going back to what I said about the $100 million, if that's how much it costs just for Los Angeles, imagine how much money we would save throughout the entire nation. It's a lot of money. I've gone through all my speakers, so I'd like to give the floor the rest of my time to Mr. Torrance.
Thank you very much. Back to what I was saying. Right now, as I speak here before you, young men and women around the world are being abducted and forced to work in the underground sex trade business. This will help decrease that horrid business and keep young adults that are not willing to sacrifice their bodies in that way a much safer future in the future. It would also bring more jobs to the United States, which you and I both know we need more jobs in this country. It would also make prostitution business much cleaner. This would help end pimps and, the way they treat their women. The STDs found in illegal prostitutes today will not be in legal prostitutes because they will have to be tested every 3 months for diseases. So again, I urge you to vote yes on House Bill 406 and make our future safer and cleaner.
I yield my time back to the council.
All right, and this bill wasn't written just stating that it would legalize prostitution. It has regulations, and you can see it in Part 2. It takes up nearly the entire page. Part 3, I'm sorry. I'd like to give my time back to the speaker.
Okay, your time is up.
Point of information, Mr. Speaker. If I'm mistaken, I believe this bill was amended in committee hearings. Okay.
It's not.
Down.
So therefore, this bill should be killed based on the fact that the amendment is not shown. Okay. Just want to make sure.
All right. I will now. We have 3 minutes, Ms. Ibacalito, for closing remarks.
Hello, everybody. Thank you. You don't have to be for prostitution to be for this bill. You have to be for the rights of women that are exploited around the country. As our speakers have said, arguments in opposition to our bill crumble at the presentation of logic and reasoning. Some say this bill won't work, but we disagree. And is it not better to try and make some impact, eliminating some human trafficking, some spread of diseases, rather than ignoring it and letting the problem spread? We are not a low-born country to allow rape, murder, and slavery. We are a country founded on freedom. Persecuting prostitutes costs Americans over $200 million a year. Beaten, raped, and underage prostitutes will be able to seek help without fearing the ramifications of the law. Many who oppose clearly have not read the bill. Let me recap on the parameters. Only brothels would be legalized and all business happens on the property of the brothel. This protects the lives of the women. These brothels must follow CDC guidelines and ensure the workers use contraceptives to ensure the health of the workers and customers alike. Businesses must register their workers, and if a business is found to be using illicit practices, it will be persecuted. These are only a few of the limits imposed on this bill. As you can surely see, we are all about the health of the women and men alike. As for morals, if you don't like it, you don't need to participate, just like everything else in life. You don't like clowns? Don't go to the circus. You don't like roller coasters? Don't ride a roller coaster. Prostitution, the underground prostitution industry is out of control and we need to fix it. As for the arguments stated, one of the arguments contradicts itself. The first speaker in opposition stated that there was no out for prostitutions. She then said, literally 30 seconds later, that one got out. That's a contradiction. And with passing the bill, prostitutes can get out if they want to. It's all what they want. You don't have to be a prostitute if you don't want to. Passing this bill will ensure outs and safety for women and workers. Also, what was said, no one chooses to be a prostitute. That is false. To quote a woman who once was a prostitute, prostitution was good for me. I had been other things, a secretary, a cashier, but none of those things were for me. I liked being a prostitute. As for the stats stated, regulation decreases the hardship for the workers. 18 times beaten. Prostitutes can go to the police and have justice for their beatings. Rape. In the bill it says that prostitutes can say no. Rape will virtually disappear. I repeat, this bill
Point of order, your time is up, Ms. Blockley.
Thank you. Please vote yes for HB 4.
We will now go to recess for 3 minutes.
Hey, Gabe, you have your speech for interrogation methods? Okay.
All right, I just have a few questions for you. You said that women are aware of what they are doing and it is their own moral decision, but are they more or less forced, or are they doing it for their moral reasons? Is it financial or is it moral?
It's pretty much what you believe is right. If you don't believe it's right, then you don't do it. It's for your own moral reasons. For the financial reasons of it, if you want to make money in a way that makes you happy, then you should have no legal ramifications for it. It's pretty much more of a financial and a moral way. If you agree with it and it's with your comfort zone, go ahead and do it. That's my view on the subject.
Do you think that for financial reasons women will naturally fall into prostitution since they don't want to do it, they'll just automatically become a prostitute, or do you think there's other ways?
Well, as you can see now, I don't say that women who need money are more likely to fall into prostitution. I've never seen that before. It's not a statistically backed fact at all. It's more of a, if you want to do it, do it. And if you need the money for it and you agree with the morals, then you can go ahead and do it.
Thank you.
I'm going to do an analysis. All right. So Ms. Ganvik is pulling aside a representative for her further interview. I just want to mention an argument stated in Bill 201, stated by the Democratic Party, saying that one who has sexual intercourse with a prostitute has to refrain from donating blood for the next year. And according to the statistics that were mentioned within that argument, a lot of people need blood, and if it's legalized, then a lot more people will be having, will, I'm sorry, a lot of more people will be having sex with prostitutes, and that also increases the U.S. national STD rate. And if it's legalized, then chances are it's going to be increased, the STD rate. So thank you for your time. Here is Miss Ganvik.
All right, now I just have a few questions for Sarah Schmidt. Has your opinion been changed at all by the opposition?
No, I think that their arguments are poor because no women would probably choose to be a prostitute.
Do you think that STDs will increase if prostitution is legalized? Because they said that they think it will decrease because it will only be safe sex. What's your opinion on that?
I don't think that having this law will change anything. That if anything, it's supposed to increase the prostitution and yeah.
92% of prostitutes want to get out of it, and your opposition has repeatedly said that it is their moral decision, it is their moral decision. Do you think they're doing it for moral reasons or financial?
I think that no woman would choose to be a prostitute, so it's a moral decision, I guess, because you're selling yourself as you're selling your body, I guess.
Thank you.
amendment. I just want to make sure everything's clear in this bill.
Exactly. Because all you're doing is telling
Can I see it?
that you're making the conscious decision to do something that's illegal, and you're going to have to pay the consequences for making that decision to break the law. Then we're going to save your ass.
Everything we said helped. Wait, what?
Prostitution is illegal for a reason.
No, it's only like...
No way.
No, probably not even.
Sex offenses.
The final.
Sex offenses, 4307. Hey, Sarah. Can you go tell Missy she's going first for this? Dude, if I was, I would kill her. Bring him outside, man. Dude, I don't want to talk to this bill at all. Screw you, Ricky. Like, look at mine. Where they're, like, it's so small.
Maybe this one. Try this one.
Do you guys have like a list of the people that are speaking for your side?
What? I'm not even over here. John, you see my speech for car insurance?
Alright, I don't feel that bad. Mine's a little bit bigger than that.
I don't think I'm gonna give it though. Cause like, we're running out of time.
Yeah, I don't want to give mine.
We're in order. We're now back in session. We will now
Which
be
one is
moving
it?
on to our next bill.
This one?
House Bill 307, increasing
We had
penalties for
something to
sexual offenders.
Is the next one.
I'll now yield 5 minutes to Ms. Hotchkiss. Opening remarks will be made by Ms. Hotchkiss, therefore Ms. Hotchkiss is speaking.
All right. My fellow congressmen and congresswomen, we would like for you to listen and understand why you should say yes in passing House Bill 307, increasing rape penalties to life in prison. Currently, the penalties for sexual offenses are varying by state and court. Most cases, penalties are as low as 2 years or $20,000 in fines, as well as the convict's name being added to a list of sexual offenders. These low penalties are dangerous. People are being assaulted by repeat offenders because these people are not in jail. These people are walking around free. The current costs for this bill with life in prison can go up to an average of 50,000 tax dollars, but that is a lot less than the emotional and physical costs that people are getting taken away from them because they are being raped and assaulted by repeat offenders who have not been put away. Current legislation is often also disregards higher punishment for more violent crimes, including rape with a weapon, the assault of young, elderly, and handicapped, and especially rape crimes against men. If the penalties are severely increased, this will protect the population from being raped or attacked by repeat offenders, and also to deter possible sexual assaults. One opposition that we have come across thus far is that if this is going to affect statutory rape. This bill is not for statutory rape. This bill is for people who are violently assaulted and raped, and it will go through the due process of law in the courts. People will not be convicted just because
someone said that they were raped. People will be convicted because the court has decided and has enough evidence to determine that these people are dangerous. Again, I ask you to vote yes for House Bill 307.
All right, I guess I've got 2 minutes to sleep.
Switching in for a second so I can get to the mic.
Thank you. I will now yield 3 minutes to Mr. Marengo for opposing arguments.
Okay, I'd like to yield 2 minutes of my time to Ms. Bucklito.
I am reading this speech in place of another colleague that cannot speak. My colleagues, there are moments in time when one can't go back. Why spend a lifetime for an instantaneous mistake? I rise in opposition of increasing penalties for sexual offenses. I take you back to the year 1989. There was an incident in Central Park where a jogger was assaulted and raped. 5 men were convicted for this offense. They spent from 1990 until 2002 in prison. They were released towards the end of their sentence because another man confessed to the rape. DNA was recovered and matched to that man. He confessed because he just began serving a life sentence for murder. Otherwise, the men could have spent another 10 years in prison. It was a combined 60 years of prison sentencing for innocent people. What happens when life in prison or capital punishment becomes the sentencing? 5 lifetimes would have been wasted for mistakes made by the NYPD. Another policy I stand by is to forgive and forget. It was brutal, it was an assault, it was traumatic. But is ruining the assaulter's life really worth it? I agree with 10 to 20 years in prison, but not a lifetime for an hour of mental instability. According to the Department of Justice and Bureau of Statistics, only 5.3% of offenders repeat their crimes. If 95% of convicts learn their lessons within their decade-long sentence, then why sentence them for life? There was no available statistical evidence demonstrating the relationship of increasing sentences for rape and a decrease in sexual crime rates. This bill would increase the tax rates to compensate for the longer span in prison. If this bill passes, the rape victim would have to pay for the attacker's food and health for the rest of his or her life. The memories go away with time unless someone brings them up from the dirt. Looking at one's taxes and wondering why one has to pay so much, then realize it is because the attacker has to stay in prison for the rest of the time.
Your 2 minutes are up.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
I'd like to yield the remainder of my time to Ms. Luckman.
I rise in opposition of the bill HB 307 to increase penalties of sexual offenses only if a rape kit has been validated. First off, on average, only 50 to 60% of rape kits test positive, and rape kits examinations cost $1,200 according to OpposingViews.com, and rape kits itself cost on average $500. Not to mention, many hospitals send the bill to the victims whether innocent or guilty of these costs, despite of the ability of the government to cover the cost. If there is no suspect, then most cases sit on a shelf unidentified, and there are currently about 500,000 kids sitting untested. Also think of the victim. After going through a life-damaging experience, then having to uncomfortably have a rape kit and examinations done when even just talking about assault can be challenging. Sexual offenses include sexual harassment. Does this mean someone who said one bad thing that may have offended someone that had proof of it should be in jail their whole life or the death sentence? The percentage of sexual offenders who will or most likely...
Point of order, your 3 minutes are up. I'll now yield 3 minutes to Mr. Temple for supporting arguments.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Going off of what the first speaker from across the aisle stated, that case was from 1989. Clearly, my fellow representatives, the technology has advanced to where we can successfully convict a suspect. DNA evidence is one of the biggest things that gets former criminals exonerated from prison. But now with our new technology, we don't have to worry about false convictions because clearly we have the technology. I now yield 1 minute of my time to Ms. Collette.
I rise in support of House Bill 307, increasing rape penalties for sexual offenders. These victims who get sexually offended are from young boys and girls under the age of 18 to men and women older than 60 years old, and all in between, and men and women who are handicapped, and mentally disabled. The horrible part is not just that victims get sexually offended or raped, it's also that they get physically and mentally abused and sexually and the sexual predator who only gets 2 to 5 years in jail with a $20,000 fine. According to the Northwest Herald magazine, there was a man who raped and killed a 13-year-old girl and was put in jail for 5 years with a $220 fine and was later put on parole. Now I'm going to ask you something. Let's just say in the near future you have a kid.
Point of order, your 1 minute is up, Ms. Cicletta.
May I ask how much time I have left? Thank you. Okay. Now, if someone is raped, why would you want that person's, I don't know what you're going to call him, the suspect, why would you want him free on the streets again? Like the opening speaker said, the lowest penalty is 2 years or a $20,000 fine. Now, if you rape a child, I believe you should be in prison for life. You deserve it. You put a burden on that child. You put the child through that. You deserve to be in prison for life. And I'll yield the remainder of my time to Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. I will now yield 3 minutes to Mr. Meridian for opposing arguments.
Thank you. I'd like to yield a minute of my time to Mr. Leshik.
I rise in opposition of House Bill 307, increasing the penalty of sex offenders. The way the bill is written is a little extreme. There could be a case when an 18-year-old is dating a 16 or 17-year-old, and the parents want to take it to trial, and the 18-year-old could be put into prison for life. And then also, if a man is false convicted and put in the jail for life, that would be a waste of a life for him. But this would also be good if the sex offenders, never mind. I urge my fellow congressmen and congresswomen to oppose House Bill 307. I yield my time to Mr. Meridian.
Thank you. And make a note of this, guys. We're opposing it, but not because we don't think that they shouldn't be put in jail. Just, they deserve to be punished, but to the extent of being in prison for a lifetime is a little excessive, and that's the main reason why we're against it. I'd like to yield the remainder of my time to Mr. Corona.
Thank you. My fellow committee members, I stand in opposition of House Bill 307, Life in Prison for Sexual Assault. According to womenshealth.gov, sexual assault can be verbal, visual, or anything that forces a person to join unwanted sexual contact, such as attention or exhibitionism, which is basically showing yourself off. So there's obviously, how specific is this bill on determining what kind of sexual assault we're legislating on? So why we're against this bill is that these people deserve, to be in prison, but a life in prison over perhaps over an hour or something of a crime, they do deserve punishment, but this bill is too extreme. According to the Rape, Abuse, and Incest Network, every two minutes, someone in the U.S. is sexually assaulted. However, not every one of these assaults are like massive rape or, bodily mutilation. So, and to that same website, rape has been down 60% since 1993. So why would we make a bill on something that's on a decline? There's also comes the issue of lying, of false testimonies. What if the accuser is lying? In 1994, there was a study made of 104 complaints, and between 1978 and 1987, they found that 41% of those allegations were false. This meaning that if this bill were passed, innocent people would go to jail for life for a crime that they did not commit.
Point of order, your 3 minutes are up.
1 minute.
Well,
thank you.
Your party's 3 minutes. I will now yield 3 minutes to Mr. Temple for supporting arguments.
Going off what the first speaker of the last round said, he stated that if an 18-year-old was dating a 16-year-old, he would be put life in prison. Well, if he would have read the bill completely, he would know that it clearly says that there must be sufficient evidence that the sexual offense in question was violent and unable to be inverted. I don't think that the court would find an 18-year-old dating a 16-year-old if they kissed. That would be violent. So I'm just proving that point wrong. And I'll yield 1 minute at a time to Ms. Heather Clark.
Causing someone the drama and pain by sexually assaulting them is unforgivable. So for that, I rise in support of House Bill 307. According to RAIN, or the Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network, nearly 1 in every 4 women and 1 in every 6 women will be sexually assaulted by the age of 18. Every 2 minutes, someone in the U.S. is sexually assaulted. This has become too big of a problem and is not addressed properly. Rapists are getting away with their crime without properly serving punishment. 97% of rapists never spend a day in jail, and if they are convicted, they can spend as low as 2 years in prison. After that, they can go right back to harming others or even go back to harming the very same victim that reported them. They are rarely reported to do how frightened some of the victims are. Out of every 100 rapes, 46 get reported and 12 lead to an arrest. 9 get prosecuted, 5 lead to a felony conviction, and as little as 3 will spend a day in jail. It is absurd how easy it is to be excused for rape. By increasing the consequences for committing...
Your minute is done.
Thank you.
I'd like to yield the remainder of my time to Mr. Radowski.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, I rise before you today in support of House Bill 307, increasing the penalties for sexual offenses. 2 years and a $20,000 fine is all an ill-minded sex offender faces after attacking a vulnerable human being who never know what they did wrong, asking themselves what they did wrong. And the victim gets years and years of never-ending images, scars that will always cover their bare skin, psychological damage like post-traumatic stress disorder, and the unending terror that they might face this person on the streets again. We as human beings have the responsibility to work together to increase the penalties for violent sexual offenses to life in prison. According to RAIN.com, every 2 minutes someone in the United States is sexually assaulted, and every year 207,754 people are victims of rape. I have such a strong connection with this bill because of the fact that my own cousin had to go through this experience at the age of 6. And the ill-mannered man, he's walking the streets today. As stated in the bill, these low penalties are making it easy for the repeat offenders to attack once again. So today I stand before you, urging you each, not as Democrats or Republicans, but as simple human beings, to help increase the penalties for rape to life in prison and protect those who cannot protect themselves. Thank you.
Your 3 minutes are up.
Oh, I yield the time to Mr.
Sorry, you're out of time. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I'll now yield 3 minutes to Jared Matthews for closing arguments.
Thank you. No one can understand the trauma of a sexual assault. These victims will suffer the pain and terror of memories for the rest of their lives, while their attackers walk free. Rape is not a mistake. Do we have a right to add to the trauma of the victims by knowing that their attacker is free to harm them again? Again, recall that this bill is not for statutory rape. Recall that the evidence must be sufficient and that the court must follow the due process of law. Look closely to our bill. We want to punish the rapists with this bill. According to Voice, only 3% of reported rapists are false. This means that false reports are hardly a thing to be worried about. Remember the victims, remember your friend and family. How would you feel if your friend or family member was raped? If you want to protect those you care about, then vote yes to House Bill 307. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now go into a 3-minute recess before the vote.
No, Shelby.
Okay, House Bill 307, increasing penalties for sexual offenders. I think the main issue with this House bill is that the problem is convictions. Not so many people are convicted, and that is what Heather pointed out on the Republican side. Now, this House bill, if passed, would not increase the convictions that there currently are. Therefore, hence, how are we helping the cause?
All right. Well, my main concern actually is about what they talked about with the rape, how people, sexual offenders are going to be punished for their whole life over like a minute. Well, I mean, it's the same thing with murder, isn't it? I mean, it's just a couple minutes, you know. It shouldn't be the same. I have a problem with that.
That's right. If there are so many people who can control their urges, why should we let people who seemingly can't get away with it? Thank you, Ellie. Now interviewing Leah Hotchkiss. Okay, Leo. Since you are one of the creators of this bill, what inspired you to prompt this issue? Is there a specific story?
Actually, the truth is I didn't have a bill to join, and Jarrett brought it up to me, and I thought it was a really good issue that needed to be addressed, so I joined up with them.
Was there any particular moment that spoke loudest to you?
In the debate? Yeah. When Eric brought up his own personal issue with this, that was, I started tearing up. That was bad. I had never known that there was it just brought the whole thing home, I guess.
Of course, it's always easier when something personal hits you. Well, thank you so much, Leah. Okay, now interviewing Eric Ryrastik. Eric, you support this bill, correct?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and I have a question for you. As your teammate, as you may call her, Heather mentioned that she implied that the main issue is not with whether the time spent in jail is too little, but that there are not enough convictions. People can get away with this without anybody ever finding out they completed the crime. Do you agree that that is the biggest issue concerning this bill?
I think definitely yes. People who rape another human being should never have the right to walk free again. They're committing a violent act that's unforgivable in every way.
But with that being said, how would passing this bill actually help that problem?
Well, to be honest with you, increasing the penalties to life in prison would deter many offenders. As one of the opposition stated, that the memories fade and the rapists shouldn't be put in life in prison for a instantaneous mistake. It's not a mistake. They're making that decision, and they deserve to be punished for it.
So you're saying that you hope if the bill were to be passed, more people would be deterred not to do this anymore?
Not to do this, and if they do, then they get life in prison. They deserve it.
Thank you, Eric.
He's right there, just like. Oh, I'm just saying, like, I'm saying the same thing. I'm glad that he pushed Matt instead of you, because I still think you would have just. Good job. Yeah.
interrogation methods and equalizing gender and charge.
What are you doing up here, dude? Where are we right now? Oh, so we're right back. I was on that list.
A2 has like all the good bills.
I know. I have to speak on that one. But I'm not going to.
Mine was pretty much the only cool one. Yeah.
Did this bill get amended, the interrogation?
No, nothing's wrong.
Then that's a problem.
Oh wait, we're opposed, aren't we? Oh goodness. Okay.
I said I'd give you a speech. You can speak for him.
Okay, does your class does the knocking?
What?
Do the knocking. Which class does it? Which teacher?
What class does it? Our hour does it. First hour does it. I don't know.
PTSD. With 54 yeses, 29 no, and 15 abstains, the bill passes.
Mike Zaransky, come up here.
Great speech in support of that bill, and I was so pissed off that I could not.
Everybody please return to their seats. We have to get through this.
Mike, you're speaking first. Adam, you're speaking second.
We're now going on to House Bill 109, interrogation methods. I will now yield 5 minutes to Joey Elson and Andrew Lindstrom.
4:46 a.m., 5 hijackers crashed American Airlines Flight 11 into the World Trade Center's North Tower. Then, at 9:03, another 5 hijackers crashed United Airlines Flight 175 into the South Tower. If that was not enough, another 5 hijackers flew American Airlines Flight 77 into the Pentagon at 9:37 a.m. According to the 9/11 timelines, the total deaths as a result of 9/11 is 2,996 people. All these innocent people. If something could have been done to get the information about the attack to save these innocent 2,996 people, then the United States should be allowed to use whatever techniques that fall under the limited torture category. Torture is illegal, but the many lives we save cannot compare to the pain we inflict on one individual that plotted suffering and death to our citizens. Using torture that is limited does not physically harm an individual, but instead creates anxiety for them to gain valuable information. Some methods that fall under the limited torture category are controlled fear, which is like muzzle dogs, yelling, and waterboarding. Although waterboarding strikes up a huge argument, the United States has only used it 3 times since 9/11. On the other hand, the methods that Al-Qaeda practices are intended to create physical harm to the prisoner. Some of Al-Qaeda's methods are public beatings and decapitations. Our methods that fall under limited torture are nothing compared to someone getting decapitated.
By using limited torture methods, many positive and life-saving events could come of it. According to the Heritage Foundation, 39 terrorist plots against the United States have been foiled. Without using limited torture methods, the United States could have had another devastating attack like 9/11. It should not be the first thing the U.S. jumps to use, always though depending on the situation. Although terrorists being tortured may give us information we did not know to ask. Having information we did not know about can get innocent lives out of where an attack is happening, especially if it is a ticking time bomb type of situation. Using limited torture methods may well go above your morals and beliefs, but the war against terrorism isn't going down any bit. If there has already been 39 attempts to inflict damage upon the United States since 9/11, imagine what the future holds for us. Anything we can do as the voice for America and its people should be acted upon quickly by voting yes to House Bill 109. Give my time to Mr. Temple. The floor.
I will now yield 2 minutes.
He gave his floor, technically gave him time to me, but I'll yield my time, Mr. Speaker.
All right. I yield 3 minutes to Mr. Meridian for opposing arguments.
I'd like to give...
For the sake of time, I'll yield 2 minutes to you.
Okay. I'd like to yield 2 minutes of my time to Mr. Zaransky.
I rise in opposition of House Bill 109. I am not opposed to the interrogation to get information, but I do know that in their bill they did mention using forms of limited torture. Torture is just the quickest way to get a lie. And there are already plenty of interrogation methods that are just as effective for getting information. When someone is being tortured, no matter what kind, they will tell you anything to make it stop. Some people will argue, well, you could tell when they're lying. But in that situation, the body can fabricate the most elaborate lies, and they will be able to sound true. And what if they don't know anything? Sometimes people are often victims of misidentification. According to the U.S. Army Interrogation Field Manual, in a successful interrogation, the interrogator must constantly keep a good rapport, and that gives the impression that they just don't care about the information, they care about the person themselves, and they stay on, as they refer to them as the source. They stay on the good side, and they could use a direct approach. A direct approach is only used if the interrogation or the interrogator believes that the source will cooperate or if they need the information quickly. But a more reasonable approach is the incentive approach. Problems with the incentive approach are that the source knows his rights and privileges. They won't always accept what you offer. And the other problem that might be is that they provide false information just for the incentive. But there are several other approaches, including the emotional, pride and ego, futility, the we know all approach, the file and dossier, establish your identity, repetition, rapid fire, silent, and the change of scene approaches. But the approach is just the first stage of interrogation. After the approach, they begin questioning. There are also several ways to question the source, the direct, follow-up, control, prepared.
Your 2 minutes are up, Mr. Zaransky.
Thank you.
In the response of my colleague from across the aisle, if he would have read Section 3 of the bill, it clearly says the interrogator has to know the person being interrogated is associated with vital information that could possibly save millions of people's lives. He stated that there's no way to prevent people from falsely being interrogated when it clearly says in the bill that they have to have evidence to support that they are involved. Now, this bill is not about torture. This bill is about national security. Now, I know with my current government, I feel safe because some methods are allowed, but I'd like to say that methods before 2009, when Barack Obama issued Executive Order 13440, which was, before that, they had 2007. In 2007, President George Bush issued Executive Order 13440, the other one was 13447, that's my fault, states that everything, all types of interrogation are allowed except for A, torture as defined in section of 2340 of Title 18 United States Code, any acts prohibited by the section 2441D of Title 18 United States Code, including murder, torture, cruel or inhumane treatment, mutilation or maiming, intentionally causing serious bodily injury, rape, sexual assault or abuse, taking of hostages, or performing biological experiments. This bill is about limited torture methods that, like things like this. He was stating that torture is going to be allowed when clearly it's not going to be allowed. I don't understand where he's coming from with that, and therefore I urge you to vote yes for House Bill 109. How much time do I have left? I'd like to reserve the remainder of my time. I'll yield the rest to Mr. Week.
Thank you. I'll now yield 2 minutes to Mr. Meridian for closing arguments.
And I'd like to yield my 2 minutes to Mr. Torrance.
Thank you. I'm speaking on behalf of someone else. The Eighth Amendment states, nor cruel or unusual punishments be inflicted. The Fifth Amendment states, nor shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself, nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property, without due process of law. I rise before you, my fellow congressmen and women, in hopes that this unconstitutional bill be driven to the ground. We, as the United States of America, set the standard of excellence among countries. We've been idolized for our freedom, growth, diversity, and economy. Why should we be subject to lowering ourselves to the brutality of torture methods to interrogate? First world countries do not partake in these actions. Somalia does. Kenya does. Cambodia does. Why should we? We are democracy first, which is why we are here right now, but we are also a republic. This means we must abide by the Constitution set forth by our forefathers. Going against the Constitution is going into a state of nature where none of our rights are protected. These men and women, regardless of their doings, have the same rights that you and I have. Limited torture methods is just another way of saying we justify what happened at Guantanamo Bay. Yelling, waterboarding, controlled fear, and sleep adjustments were all used there. All that these actions are doing is forcing terrorists to give the answers the government wants, not always the correct ones. According to the numerous sources such as the Los Angeles Times and the United Press International, there have been 8 independent suicide attempts. In 2003, 23 inmates tried to simultaneously hang themselves. How can limited torture methods cause 31 people to take their own lives? Because all of these interrogation methods cause psychological stress on the brain. I would like to also call attention to the statement, for example, the United States uses waterboarding, but has only been used a total of 3 times since 9/11. That fact is horrifically untrue. Abu Zabada was captured in 2002.
All right, before I get started, he was talking about constitutional rights. I believe constitutional rights are only applied to U.S. citizens. So you can't come up here and preach that constitutional rights are being taken away from someone who's not a citizen of the United States of America. And I'll yield the remainder of my time to Mr. Andrew.
My fellow representatives, I rise up in support of House Bill 109. According to Jose Rodriguez Jr., the former director of the CIA's National Clandestine Service, today many people are playing armchair quarterback. They look at the enhanced interrogation techniques such as the insult slap done with an open hand, sleep deprivation stress techniques, and waterboarding and call them torture. The terrorists were not tortured because they were not subjected to severe pain, but instead they were made to feel very uncomfortable and experience a sense of hopelessness. Instead of describing the CIA as torturers, people should consider them shields of protection in the light of an interrogation strategy. According to the Washington Post, Mark Thiessen, interrogation with enhanced techniques led to the discovery of a KSM plot, the second wave, to use East Asian operatives to crash a hijacked airliner into a building in Los Angeles. KSM later acknowledged before a military commission at Guantanamo Bay that the target was the Liberty Tower, the tallest building on the West Coast. The memo explains that information obtained from KSM also led to the capture of Ridwan bin Isomuddin, better known as Hambali, and the discovery of the Gureva cell, a 17-member Islamaya cell tasked with executing the second wave. In other words, without enhanced interrogation methods, there would be a hole in Los Angeles to match the one that we have in New York right now. Enhanced interrogation methods are a necessity to keep you, the residents of the United States of America, safe from all forms of terrorism. These techniques have
Point of order, your 2 minutes are up.
Point of information, does not the Universal Declaration of Human Rights as set forth by the United Nations, which we are a part of, does that not state that cruel and unusual punishment is illegal around the world?
Actually, no, it says for U.S. citizens, sorry. She doesn't have the floor, so.
Point of order, she meant the U.S., not the U.S., the universal, and it's also in the Geneva Convention.
I don't understand how he has the floor, so.
Melissa Buckley called for a point of information. She
And I
has the
answered,
right to
that's the end of it. Am I right?
Yes.
So
Mr.
Mr.
Meridian did not
Speaker.
have, Mr. Meridian did not have the floor to speak.
Thank you.
Ms. Buckley did.
That's what I said.
And you did not have a point to retaliation either. So for both four leaders have point of orders on them. Anyways, I will now yield 3 minutes to closing arguments. Will Monica Guerra and Crystal Marshall please put forward this information?
Hello, everyone. Okay. Using limited torture methods is a highly controversial issue. Although, as stated before, Al-Qaeda's methods are far worse than any methods used by the United States. The only method that could remotely come close to what Al-Qaeda practices is waterboarding. But what makes waterboarding different is that first, there must be a physician present to protect the prisoner's life. Second, the person must be told they are not going to be killed to spare them mental suffering. And after that, their feet would be elevated, a cloth would be placed over their face, and water poured over the cloth for a maximum of 40 seconds, a time span during which anyone could hold their breath. Therefore, waterboarding does not fall under the limited torture methods and does not result in death, and would a method that is used by Al-Qaeda. Also, as late as 2006, fully half of the government's knowledge about the structure and activities of Al-Qaeda came from limited method interrogation.
An eye for an eye is not the case here. It's about protecting the innocent men and women and children of the United States and keeping the freedoms we have as citizens. Our terrorist attack can jeopardize anything the United States has, such as included everyone's lives, freedoms to do certain things, and being the most powerful country in the world. In a matter of an hour, just like 9/11, those things can be taken away from us. If using limited torture method is not legalized, Al-Qaeda is not going to stop planning terrorist attacks, and if the United States sits back and does not try to foil these attacks, then each and every one of us is at risk of failing victims.
Please vote yes to House Bill 109.
Thank you. We will now go into recess for 3 minutes before the vote.
Obi.
Oh, 109, House Bill 109. And the issue here was on
Limited torture.
limited torture. Thank you. I think here the big issue has to do more with these are people who have really hurt America, have really hurt millions of lives. Honestly, if you look at everybody who's been affected, not only dead victims, but everyone who's been affected from that, it's a butterfly effect. In this situation, I think that yes, torture is very called for. This is something that they deliberately did, these terrorists, and they should, be willing to pay for it.
With my own personal views, I believe that there are better ways to get interrogation, to give a proper interrogation instead of torturing someone and maybe even losing that information. And there are better ways to go about it. So here for an interview, we have Heather Clark. Ms. Clark, in the opening argument, it was stated that limited torture would be used for interrogation to save lives, but only a few short minutes later, Mr. Temple stated that torture would not be allowed. What is your view on this?
Can you repeat the question?
In the opening argument, it was stated that limited torture would be used for interrogation to save lives, but only a few short minutes later, Mr. Temple stated that torture would not be allowed. What is your view on this?
I believe that torture should be allowed because, it will help save many lives, and it would only be used for when you actually know that the person is is a perpetrator, then hard evidence needs to be issued for that. But I believe that it should be definitely.
And as one of the opposers of the bill stated, torture is the quickest way to get a lie. Do you agree or disagree with the statement?
I strongly agree with the statement, actually. Yes, I do. I feel like if we make people see how mean we can be, they'll be afraid of what we would be pushing to do further.
So you support torture, but you don't think it'll be effective?
I do think it'll be effective.
You just said it's the quickest way to get a lie. Yeah. The opposer said that it was the quickest way to get a lie.
I don't actually know what a lie means, to be completely honest with you, so.
Like lying, dishonest.
Oh, to get a lie? I don't think it'd get a lie. Honestly, I feel like they would be subjected to more torture because because they're subjected to more torture that it would pull the truth out of them.
Thank you, Ms. Clark.
You got me?
Yes, we're voting yes. It's Joey's bill. Come on. Thanks. Wait, we're done for the day. Danielle. Yes. So next Thursday we're gonna go past 4C. I don't know. We might. It's gonna take some time. I've been saying yes. Woo! No.
Yeah.
Yield your time to Mr. Henry. No, I don't want to.
Should I say something? Should I say penis? Penis. 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 Trent. I just want to talk to the thing. I know.
Remember Sam did that in middle school?
He did it?
Yeah, we were singing happy birthday to someone, but we were playing the penis game before that. Just like, penis!
Did you get in trouble for that?
No, not at all.
So we're tabling this for the next day? Yeah. What's next week?
Marijuana.
Marijuana.
Euthanasia.
Euthanasia didn't pass. Thought.
It did.
Oh, I was thinking electoral college.
We got some controversial ones. But there are another 7. I don't know if we'll get through them.
And then there's going to be an 8th one. Because we're tabling that the next one.
We're going to have to go a lot quicker.
Yeah.
No, we did. Like, we didn't even go 3 rounds for some of them. We just went 2. Yeah. I don't know where else we can cut the time off. Recess will have to be shorter or something.
Bullshit. Women drivers suck.
So are we done for the day? After
Yeah.
this? We're just waiting for the results and then we're going to lunch, I think.
Woo!
Thank God. I'm hungry. Jake! We're not going in at lunch.
Hey, DJ.
Why did you say DJ?
Luke.
It's down there.
I know, it's going on the microphone.
Oh. Hey. Bottle. Excuse me. The lady in the leopard dress, you have an amazing rack.
Who's in a leopard dress?
No one. Yeah.
It'd be funny if it ended up. Oh, really?
Yeah. Duh.
With like St. Thomas.
Oh, I thought you guys were like saying stuff that you shouldn't know. I'm just kidding. Right was gonna get on. Hey, Chairman.
I'm sorry. Every speech I cut off. Bullshit. Okay, right there. Okay, right when I was talking about how they said that they only were 3 times as July. Yep. Like 83 times. Like that could have altered all of the
49 yeses, 34 noes, and 16 abstains. The bill fails.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to press the floor.
Point of order, Sonia's requested the floor. Mr. Temple, you have 3 minutes.
I'd like to put two motions on the floor. I'd like to table a revote for House Bill 109 to next week, and I'd also like to table House Bill 306 to next week.
Motions are seconded. We will now go to a vote. Please go to your respective seat, and then we will proceed with voting.
Vote at one at a time.
Where's my pen?
Vote no for the revote.
You steal my pen? It's just like this, except
touch it. Just take that one.
You think it has more ink in it? Yeah, it does.
But it's not the same.
The first motion that we will address is the revote for interrogation methods for next week. Okay, so Committee 1, please raise your hand if you're in favor of revoting next week. Committee 2? Committee 3? Committee 4?
Oh, well. Not up in here. Not up in here.
There were only 40 yeses, therefore that motion fails. We will now go on to the motion of tabling House Bill 306 for next week. It was already seconded. All right, so Committee 1, are you in favor of tabling it for next week? Committee 2?
No. They already said no.
Committee 3? Point of order, we are still in session. Committee 4? With 71 yeses, that motion passes.
Thank God, everything's going so
And with no business left, we are now adjourned.